Chapter 1046. On Monday morning, Fu Jun rushed to Jiangcheng. He, Yang Yi, and Lans Haokai were at Lans Haokai's private clubhouse. They were drinking tea and talking about the future development of Sahara Online Mall. Now Fu Jun was also a big name in the technology world that was closely watched by the media and the political business world. His every move also affected the nerves of many people. However, Fu Jun was better than Yang Yi. Yang Yi was a celebrity in the entertainment circle. There were paparazzi following him. If Yang Yi didn't deliberately shake them off, all of his whereabouts would probably be exposed. At least, Fu Jun didn't deliberately show off and didn't participate in public activities. There were no paparazzi following him every day. Old Fu, why does the leader over there have such a long reach? Does the ownership of a company have to come to you? Lans Haokai asked curiously. He was talking about the issue of whether Sahara Online Mall should acquire Wanjia Online Mall. Wanjia Online Mall was founded by Zhu Wang, the owner of a large-scale supermarket chain called Wangjia Supermarket in the western and northern parts of Guangdong Province. He had a good eye and saw the online shopping craze brought about by Sahara Online Mall. Moreover, Zhu Wang was a person with a little idea. He organized his supermarket suppliers, a group of small factories and workshops, and set up Wanjia Online Mall in a hurry. If Yang Yi paid attention at that time, he would have realized that Wanjia was actually following the route of Taobao. It was interesting to say that Sahara Online Mall was a bit like a large-scale, more rich online supermarket. This online mall set up by the supermarket boss was following the route of a shopping mall. It provided shops for other factories and small workshops to set up stalls. Logically speaking, such a model had the possibility of success. Moreover, when Wanjia Online Mall was set up, they followed Sahara Online Mall and advertised everywhere in the country. Therefore, it attracted Fu Jun's attention. It was a pity that Wanjia Online Mall's publicity was in a hurry, but the service was a mess. After all, it was an online mall set up by a group of outsiders. Moreover, Zhu Wang didn't really want to do this business. He was more interested in the industry. The online mall was just a small side business that he wanted to make a profit and throw it to the venture capital. Therefore, with the support of the local government, Wanjia Online Shopping Mall recruited many graduate programmers from Guangdong Province's universities and created an online shopping mall that lacked service. It also attracted a large number of small enterprises to join in, and many local people in Guangdong Province to buy it. However, unprofessional issues were quickly exposed. The web interface was unreasonable, the payment model was difficult, the logistics delivery was seriously lagging, the customer service was indifferent, and so on. A lot of negative news was exposed by the media at the end of last year. Many netizens even went to the Sahara Online Mall's product reviews to complain about Wanyi after they were cheated. Therefore, Fu Jun didn't take it to heart when he saw that eBay Online Shopping Mall didn't pose a threat to the Sahara Online Shopping Mall. It wasn't until a few days ago that it was mentioned again. It turned out that at the end of December, when it was time to pay wages and bonuses to the workers, some factories couldn't stand it any longer and blocked the entrance of Wanjia's online shopping mall and Wangjia Supermarket's headquarters. However, what stunned them was that big boss Zhu Wang, who had personally called them a week ago and promised that he would definitely solve the problem, had actually escaped abroad and disappeared without a trace. What disappeared with him was his family who had emigrated overseas, as well as the transaction fee and deposit of up to 1 billion. As Fu Jun sipped his tea, he told the story to Yang Yi and Lan Zhoukai. After all, he wasn't the person involved, so he could easily describe it. This incident before the new year caused a huge commotion in Guangdong Province. Many people ran to the province and the higher-ups to report it to the government. They wanted the government to give them an explanation. Anyway, this year, several bosses in Guangdong Province had a hard time. Fortunately, this incident was suppressed by the media and dealt with in a low-key manner. What are they going to do now? Lans Haokai asked. Auction off Zhu Wang's Wangjia Online Mall and his Wangjia Supermarket? If it's Wangjia Supermarket, the land under it is very particular. Lans Haokai was indeed in the real estate business. He immediately thought of the key point. Wangjia Supermarket is out of the question. Last month, the bank auction was just finished. The boss of Hailong Supermarket in eastern Guangdong province got 750 million yuan of liquid capital and bought all the debts of Wangjia Supermarket and Wangjia Supermarket. Fu Jun waved his hand and said with emotion, "Hey, why didn't you say so earlier?" Lan Caokai felt sorry. He was very interested in the real estate market in Guangdong province. Wangjia Supermarket could be said to be a good entry ticket. Fu Jun complained. How could he have time to know what happened in northwest Guangdong? What's more, it was not in the same industry as him. Fu Jun only knew that Wangjia Supermarket had been bought when someone talked to him about it a few days ago. Now what's the price of Wangjia? Yang Yi thought for a while, looked at Fu Jun and said, since Wangjia Supermarket bought it for 750 million yuan, Wangjia shouldn't be too expensive, right? And they only came to us now. Could it be that Wangjia can't sell it? The online shopping craze caused by the Sahara online shopping mall had spawned countless e-commerce companies. However, this bubble had gradually burst in the past 2 years. Countless companies that did not have the strength and could not grab the cake had been eliminated. eBay was not the first, nor would it be the last. Under this background, even the investors who were jealous of the Sahara online mall's popularity had to think carefully before making a decision. Actually, there are still people who want to take over Wangjia, but there are 2 main reasons why it has been delayed until now. Fu Jun explained to Yang Yi. On the one hand, there are people who want to take over. Their identities are very complicated. Some of them specialize in venture capital, and some of them are traditional manufacturing companies who want to enter the internet business. They have one thing in common. They only want the brand and website of Wangjia. They don't want to bear the debt of up to 400 million yuan that has not been settled yet. This was the result of the debt that had been offset by part of the money from the Wangjia Supermarket auction. 400 million yuan? How can it be so much? Lan Caokai frowned and asked, the Wangjia you mentioned is not worth 100 million yuan, right? Yes, Wangjia is not worth 100 million yuan. Someone told me that the highest bidder wanted to take over Wangjia with 60 million yuan. Since Wangjia is only worth 60 million yuan, who wants to bear the debt of 400 million yuan? Fu Jun smiled bitterly and said, you may not know this, but Zhu Wang is really crazy. He asked many manufacturers to freeze the deposits in their accounts. He asked for an exorbitant amount, from 200,000 yuan to 1 million yuan. He also promised others that the more deposits they paid, the more promotion resources the website would give them. Obviously, at that time, Zhu Wang wanted to get a sum of money and leave. Wangjia was strongly supported by the government of northwest Guangdong. In the past 2 years, there were close to 1,000 manufacturers and small workshops from Guangdong that had opened stores on Wangjia. Moreover, Zhu Wang probably wanted to wait until there were 10,000 companies that joined and collected billions of deposits before he left. Unfortunately, Wangjia did not last that long. Therefore, when Zhu Wang left, he had no choice. The money that he took away, after deducting the assets of Wangjia Supermarket, probably did not make more than a few 100 million yuan. That's true. I don't think anyone would be so stupid to spend more than 400 million yuan for a 60 million yuan Wangjia. Lan Caokai shook his head. He felt that this business was not worth it. Yang Yi did not say anything yet. He looked at Fu Jun and waited for him to finish explaining the reason why Wangjia had dragged on until now. Secondly, Guangdong province still wants to support small and micro enterprises. They hope that these traditional businesses will not be affected by this incident and will not dare to use the internet. The government had discussed with them, and they also hope that Wangjia can continue to operate. After all, Wangjia had brought them a lot of benefits in the past, and their turnover had increased a lot. Of course, they still have to protect their interests. Fu Jun told Yang Yi. Yang Yi's understanding of Taobao was mostly from his experience in China during the last few years of his previous life. As he rarely went out, he often used other people's accounts to buy things he needed. But he knew that although Taobao did not have a good reputation, it had built a great business platform. For those manufacturers in traditional industries, for those individual operators, it provided the internet path to riches. So, when Yang Yi heard what Fu Jun said, He could not help but admire the foresight of the Guangdong province's officials. Regardless of everything else, their foresight was right on this matter. My wife's cousin was transferred to the business office this month. In the end, Fu Jun paused for a moment. His expression became slightly serious as he talked about the key point of this matter. Actually, someone behind this has considered my relationship with him. Fu Jun's wife's cousin, who was the person behind Fu Jun, had a close relationship with a leader. Now, someone wanted to take over the business from Guangdong province's leading online shopping company, Sahara Online Shopping Mall. So he was transferred to the business office. So now that Fu Jun knew about this matter, there was an additional complicated political factor in the consideration of whether to take over the business. They didn't let us take over the business for nothing. Wanjia will be ours as long as we bear the debt of 400 million yuan. Moreover, the deposit of 400 million yuan will continue to be in our account. Even if a business withdraws halfway, they will have to wait for 3 years before they can withdraw the deposit. Fu Jun stated the conditions given by the other party. In other words, Sahara Online Shopping Mall could take over Wanjia for free. But it's still a loss. One is 60 million yuan, and the other is 400 million yuan. Lans Haokai frowned, then turned to Yang Yi. Yang Yi, what do you think about this? Lans Haokai trusted Yang Yi's judgment more when it came to the internet. Chapter 1047. Lans Haokai and Fu Jun both looked at Yang Yi. Although Yang Yi rarely directed the development of Sahara Online Mall, Fu Jun still had an indescribable trust in Yang Yi. Yang Yi rubbed his chin and carefully considered his words. He then smiled and said, "Actually, the real value of Wanjia isn't the 60 million, but the 1,000 sellers who are willing to continue the business." Lans Haokai was a little surprised. Because Wanjia's philosophy is correct, I also think that their idea of turning their online mall into a large shopping mall, or rather, an online platform for small and medium-sized businesses is correct. Yang Yi explained. You can imagine a scene. In the future, whether it's selling shoes produced by their own small shoe factory, small vendors selling their own handicrafts, or fruit farmers who can't find a market, they can all establish their own small virtual stores on our platform. Then they can find customers all over the country, or even all over the world, who are interested in their products. The problem of piracy in this world had been solved. In other words, there was a way to solve the problem of fake and inferior products on Taobao. In this way, there would be fewer unscrupulous vendors who wanted to hitch a ride, but Yang Yi felt that it would also give rise to more creative individual businesses. This model of Taobao was very promising. Therefore, before Yang Yi finished speaking, Fu Jun and Lans Haokai, who had good foresight, immediately connected with Yang Yi's brain circuit. I understand. With such a platform, whether it's an individual or a large business, their opportunities will be endless. As long as their products are attractive enough, our platform can help them solve the distance problem. Fu Jun waited for Yang Yi to finish speaking, then clenched his fist and said excitedly. Lans Haokai was more realistic. He touched his chin and exclaimed, "It's not just this problem. I remember you said before, Yang Yi, that only when traditional industries are connected with the internet can there be a way out. Otherwise, it will become a sunset industry one day. You're not just saying that we're opening a shopping mall to welcome their goods. Instead, you're saying that we're setting up a platform for them to sell their goods. In this way, the cost of their learning will be greatly reduced." But there's something I don't understand. Lans Haokai frowned slightly and said, Zhu Wang also wanted to create such a platform in the beginning. Why didn't he manage it well? Why did he choose to abscond with the funds? Logically speaking, this platform still has a lot of development potential. If everyone comes to open a shop here and charges a little service fee for every transaction, we'll make a lot of money. That's because our Sahara Online Mall occupies a large market share. Yang Yi explained. It's difficult for emerging small online malls to form an effective scale. Don't look at their turnover of more than 100 million in 2 months. That's spread among 1,000 businesses. Moreover, I think Zhu Wang was already preparing for the current situation when the economy was in a slump. Then when it gradually picked up, Zhu Wang has been transferring assets, and there's a problem with his capital reserves. Later, someone checked and found that his capital chain in the supermarket was broken. If he didn't run, he would have been caught. Fujun nodded and said. He knew some inside information from his own connections. Then we've made a big profit. It's not easy to attract 1,000 businesses. Lance Haokai laughed and said, he's helped us a lot. Now as long as we take over and connect to Sahara's traffic, this platform will definitely be successful. Lance Haokai's brain worked quickly, and he understood immediately. But if we want this model to develop well, we must lower the deposit requirement. Moreover, we can consider waiving the service fee for our businesses in the early stages. Only in this way, our platform can usher in a huge explosion of businesses and users. Yang Yi reminded Lance Haokai, who was already thinking about how everyone in the world would make money for him. Yang Yi himself didn't have much business skills, but he had a wealth of knowledge and valuable experience from others for more than 10 years. Therefore, what he told Lance Haokai was also some information he saw from his previous life. No service fee? And lower the deposit? Lance Haokai looked at Yang Yi with some surprise and asked puzzledly, then how do we make a profit? Fujun also fell into deep thought. There are many ways to make a profit. I'll list a few, and let the people in the company think about the rest. Yang Yi smiled and said. He smiled slightly, but in fact, he deliberately pretended to be unfathomable. In fact, with his lack of experience, he only knew this much. The online store is free, but we have credit verification. If the business pays a deposit, then your goods will appear with a certification mark, or pay a higher deposit, and it can show a sign of 1 to 3 compensation for fake goods. Of course, this deposit won't be too high. It's best to charge 4 or 5 digits according to different grades and product categories. This will be known only after the marketing department investigates. The main reason is to reduce the threshold of opening a store, and also to apply for a refund when the store is closed. However, many little drops make a mickle. The profit of the deposit, I don't need to say this, right? Lance Haokai nodded, and Fujun took out his leather notebook and recorded it carefully. It seemed that everything had returned to the time when he and Yang Yi were doing the Sahara online mall together. Second, our stores are also divided into several types. For example, the ordinary stores in the market are open for free, and we don't charge technical service fees. For the prosperous stores, there will be more shops with more beautiful web interfaces, more and better fonts, colors, promotion modules, and other custom modes open. For such stores, we will charge a certain technical service fee on a monthly basis. You can also call it a renovation fee. Fujun immediately understood what Yang Yi meant. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, that's a considerable cost. Also, we are currently launching such stores with a lower threshold. When the time is ripe, we can invite more big brands to enter, and we will launch a real Sahara online mall store. Such stores have a much higher deposit, and there will also be a transaction fee. Moreover, not only do they have to pay, but they also have to be verified by us. They must be brands, manufacturers, or authorized agents on the right track, or individual merchants recognized by us or a third party to stand out from ordinary stores. This is somewhat similar to the shops that we have in the Sahara online mall. However, I feel that if we put this together and really make it into a signboard, then in the future, we might be able to carry out God-making activities among ordinary merchants and help them become well-known brands in the country. This is good. Our online mall is even more worthy of its name, Lance Haokai said with a smile. Then, how can we maintain the original characteristics of our Sahara online mall? Won't this affect us? Fujun thought of a crucial question. Our Sahara online mall is still the same as before. We make the best products and the best service. We can provide first-class customer service, better products, and more reassuring quality. This is something that ordinary stores can't provide. The advantage of ordinary stores is not in their refinement, but in their choice. Yang Yi smiled and said, it's just like how we like to visit all kinds of small shops to satisfy our curiosity. But we also like to visit large supermarkets because we can buy things with more ease and feel more comfortable here. By the way, for people who have a phobia of choice, or men who are too lazy to visit stores one by one, Sahara Online Mall will be their best choice. Fu Jun's worries were resolved, and he also breathed a sigh of relief. He officially put his thoughts into the question of what will we do if we buy Wanjia? It seemed that they had now made a decision. Lance Hao Kai was also thinking about more profit models. He touched his chin and said thoughtfully, "In reality, there are shops with good locations and bad locations. I think we can also refer to this practice when we start Wanjia in the future. If they give us more money, we will put their location in front of the search page." Fu Jun smiled and said, "This is called bidding ranking. In fact, Sahara Online Mall is also doing this. By the way, Yang Yi, our Sahara Online Mall has a lot of new ways to make money. We can also copy them on Wanjia." Fu Jun looked at Yang Yi and said, "For example, some pages of advertising space, link fees, and some promotional activities." Yang Yi listened to the discussion between Fu Jun and Lance Hao Kai with a smile and nodded from time to time. He realized that his two business partners were indeed very smart people. After thinking about it, they were able to come up with ideas that Yang Yi had been preparing to talk about, but hadn't had the time to do so. Perhaps if he let the people in the company brainstorm, they might be able to come up with many of Taobao's profit models that Yang Yi himself hadn't noticed. By the way, if we really want to buy Wanjia, don't be in a hurry to act. Let the government of Guangdong province owe us a favor first. Let them help us promote and call for more businesses to move in. Lance Hao Kai was very familiar with some of the ways to deal with the government, so he suggested. "Don't worry about this." Fu Jun smiled and said, "After doing this, we can be considered a real company in Guangdong province. As long as we don't make any big mistakes, no one will come to trouble us." This was also one of the reasons why Fu Jun flew to Jiangqing to discuss this matter with Yang Yi and Lance Hao Kai. One had to know that this wasn't just a simple business action. There were also a lot of political factors behind it. Moreover, if this model was developed well, it could be exchanged for countless political achievements for some people behind the scenes. Fu Jun felt that his wife's cousin had already benefited a lot from being the leader of this business department. Looking at Fu Jun and Lance Hao Kai talking one after another, Yang Yi also wanted to show off his power. He had already thought about what he would say to Fu Jun and Lance Hao Kai next that they wouldn't expect. For example, changing the name of Wanjia's online shopping mall to Sahara Taobao. This name not only crowned with the name of the Sahara, but also the meaning of treasure hunting in the desert where countless treasures were buried. For example, in order to protect the interests of merchants and buyers, and to reduce payment risks and turnover time, they also needed to launch a third-party payment platform called Alipay. Yang Yi, Fu Jun, and Lance Hao Kai's tea party that day could be said to be a major event that would change the Chinese business landscape. But whether it was Yang Yi, Fu Jun, or Lance Hao Kai, none of them thought so far and wide. Moreover, Yang Yi, this guy, was actually talking about this new Sahara Taobao. He suddenly thought of something that seemed to be a little unrelated. It was something that involved the happiness of his friends. It wasn't great at all, but it was very important. Chapter 1048. During the break before the fourth period at noon on Tuesday, the sound of the bell could not stop the students from playing around. However, with West Chu's little tyrant calling out, "The teacher is here, the class teacher is here," the noisy classroom suddenly quieted down. The children hurriedly returned to their seats, including Shi. She was holding a shuttlecock and playing with Lan Xian, Lu Xiaoyu, and Du Yuqian in the corridor. West Chu's little tyrant was a nickname Chen Yuxuan gave himself when he came back to class this week. He probably watched the large-scale historical costume drama, Tears of the Tyrant, broadcast by Central TV, which took over Drawing Sword. All day long, he wailed and gestured with his small arms like a bodybuilder, as if he could also carry a cauldron. Li Rulin walked into the classroom with a thick stack of exercise books in her hands. She was already used to the children's panic, so she only smiled. When she saw that they had already returned to their seats, she didn't care anymore. She said in a sweet voice, "Students, I've finished reading the spring excursion experiences you received yesterday. They were all written very well. It seems like you all have gained a lot from this spring excursion, right?" "Yes." The little ones responded in unison. "It was very neat." Li Ruolin asked a few small questions, such as what they thought was the biggest gain, or if they still remembered the names of the plants they saw in the Institute of Botany. These small classroom interactions stimulated the children's enthusiasm and awakened their memories of the spring outing. Shishi was very enthusiastic. From the beginning of the class, she felt that she could answer all the teacher's questions. Moreover, the little girl was very interested in the questions about the spring outing. Therefore, Shishi had been excitedly raising her little hand high, afraid that the teacher would not see it. However, it was a pity that Li Ruolin didn't call out Cece's name. There were a few times when her gaze stopped on the little girl, and then lightly swept past her. This made Cece very disappointed. Hey, why didn't the teacher ask me to answer the questions? The little girl thought to herself, feeling a little wronged. Of course, this was not a big deal. Shishi just felt a little regretful. The thought flashed through her mind, but she still listened attentively to the teacher. However, after a while Ms. Li got to the point. She began to comment on the essay on the spring outing. Then she mentioned Shishi's name. In the spring outing experience handed in this time, many students wrote articles that left a deep impression on the teacher. For example, student Yang Shi's and student Chao Ruolin's. Li Ruolin named a few students and then smiled. Next, the teacher will first read student Yang Shi's article, and then invite her to tell the students how she wrote a good article, okay? The little girl below the stage was pleasantly surprised. She didn't expect to be singled out and praised by the teacher. One had to know that Shishi had been very disappointed just now, thinking that the teacher had not noticed her. The effect of being singled out and praised by the teacher was very obvious. Lu Xiaoyu used her elbow to nudge Shishi's little arm, giggling and winking at her. After Shishi greeted Lu Xiaoyu, she looked at the podium happily. Ms. Li Ruolin had already taken out the first workbook and began to read Shishi's essay. I'm so happy today because our school went to the spring outing together, and Dad can go with us. We got on the bus. Dad asked me and Lan Xian to teach the students to sing Goodnight Meow. Everyone sang very well. Chi-Chi from class 6 said that she was very envious of us. After getting off the bus, we visited the Botanical Research Institute and the museum. We saw a lot of plants, but my favorite was the rape flower. It was a big yellow rape flower. It was so beautiful. There were also hardworking little bees flying around. We also saw a lot of cultural relics in the afternoon. The tour guide sister said that Jiangqing is my home, and beauty depends on everyone. Oh right, we also played a very interesting handkerchief throwing game at noon. Today was really a happy day. When Li Ruolin was reading, Shishi couldn't help but shyly twist her little butt on the chair. Because the teacher was very emotional, and because these were all written by her, it felt weird to be read out. Moreover, many students couldn't help but look at her. This made Shishi feel happy, but also a little embarrassed. After the teacher finished reading, the class was filled with warm applause. Shishi's essay was very ordinary and didn't even use rich adjectives. After all, Shishi was only in first grade. A child who had just learned how to write not long ago could write a 200-word essay in a complete and orderly manner. It was already very good. Many children even stopped at the daily "Today the sun shines brightly, the sky is clear for thousands of miles" routine. Of course, it couldn't be said that other friends wrote very poorly. The children of this era were exposed to far more information than before. Sometimes, the words they used sometimes exceeded the vocabulary they could write. However, Shishi's organization was better. The paragraphs of the essay were clear. When the teacher read it, it was as if it was a memoir, awakening many beautiful memories of the little guys. This made them very impressed. Come Yangshi, come up to the podium and introduce to the students how you wrote this essay. After Li Ruolin finished reading, she smiled and called Shishi's name. Shishi was a little happy and a little shy. She walked in small steps. One moment, she wanted to walk 2 steps faster, and the next moment, she slowed down in embarrassment. After walking up to the podium, she stood beside the teacher. She didn't know where to place her 2 small hands. One moment, they were intertwined in front of her, and the next moment, she pulled them back behind her in embarrassment, as if she was hiding them. We all know that a lot of interesting things happened during the spring excursion. How did you come up with your article so that you could talk about all the highlights of our spring excursion in detail, like you are doing now? Because some students wrote about the ornamental plants in the morning and forgot to write about our experience in the afternoon. Li Ruolin asked with a smile. That's right. I actually want to write a lot. She was a little nervous at first, so she said hesitantly. Because she had been called up to the podium many times, the little girl soon adapted to it and spoke fluently. I told my papa that I wanted to write about the snacks my papa sent. There were orange juice soft candies and delicious small steamed buns. Then Lon Xian said that it was super delicious. Li Ruolin found that Cici seemed to want to repeat the whole day's experience and couldn't stop. She hurriedly interrupted her and asked, "Then how did you make the choice later?" I am Papa, tell me. Papa said that I have to write all the things I want to write, and then I have to leave the things that I think are very important and interesting. Shishi's eyes were smiling, and her eyebrows were curved. She looked very cute. She smiled and said, "So I have a lot to write." Oh, I see. That's right. We have to learn how to choose and leave out the important and interesting parts. This way, our articles will be rich in content and not too confusing. Li Ruolin nodded her head approvingly. There's more. Shishi was a little anxious. She tiptoed and turned to Teacher Li and said, "Teacher, let me tell you, I wrote a lot in my diary. Papa said that I can write everything in my diary." Shishi was not only satisfied to be able to speak freely and share her experience on the podium, but she also felt that she had done a good thing and helped other students. The little girl was in a good mood all morning. At noon, she, Lon Xian, and Lu Xiaoyu went to the cafeteria for lunch. Shishi was still talking to Lu Xiaoyu about the essay for the spring outing. "There are a lot of words that I don't know how to write, but Papa said that you can write pinyin first, and then look it up in the dictionary after you finish writing. But you don't know how to write pinyin. How can you write pinyin?" Lu Xiaoyu discussed enthusiastically. "Yes, I don't know. I just write according to what we read, but sometimes it's not right. If I can't find it, I will ask Papa. Papa knows everything," the little girl said proudly. "I don't want to look it up. It's so troublesome. I write pinyin on it for the teacher to see." Lon Xian sat down beside Shishi with a small plate and said, "But if you don't look it up, you still don't know how to write it." Shishi was a little confused. Just as the three girls were chattering away, a little boy suddenly sat down in front of them with a plate in his hand. It was Chen Yuxuan. What was this little overlord of Western Chu doing here? Chapter 1049. After the spring excursion, West Chu's little conqueror frequently appeared in front of Shishi. He didn't have any complicated thoughts. He just felt that during the spring excursion, this girl who usually only had good grades and was the answer bank that he coveted, had now become very interesting. It was inevitable that boys would admire beautiful girls who loved to sing and dance. This could be said to be a historical rule. But for the current Chen Yuxuan, his thoughts were much simpler. I, Chen Yuxuan, want to play with the most interesting girls. Therefore, he began to show off in front of Cici often, deliberately pretending to speak loudly in order to highlight his presence. But unfortunately, Shishi's attention was not on him at all. In class, when he knocked over his stationery box and made a clattering sound on the ground, Shishi only glanced at it. When she saw him pick it up, she continued to listen to the teacher attentively. During the break between classes, when he was meowing strangely, Cici was happily kicking shuttlecock with her little friends. They couldn't attract the attention of the nervous and excited little girls at all. And when Chen Yuxuan pulled the other boys to the back of the classroom to talk loudly and brag, Shishi wasn't affected at all. After Lon Xian's invitation, the two girls held hands and went to the bathroom together. Now Chen Yuxuan suddenly sat in front of Shishi, Lon Xian and Lu Xiaoyu. Before the girls could react, he slyly smiled and took out 2 small cucumbers that were wrapped together in a plastic bag from his trouser pocket. In fact, they were small and exquisite, green and shiny cucumbers. But in Jiangcheng and some cities in Jiangnan, they were called small cucumbers. Shishi, I'll show you, these are small cucumbers. Chen Yuxuan opened the plastic bag and pulled out a small cucumber. Because it had been washed clean, the skin looked a little moist. He proudly showed it to Shishi and the other two girls, as if he was presenting a treasure. Lan Xian just glanced at it and said in a loud voice, "I recognize this small green melon. Shishi's papa is very good at cooking." He cut the small green melon into pieces, and then put vinegar and sugar in it. Anyway, the small green melon is sweet and sour. It's super delicious. Xian, my papa said that it's called cucumber salad. Shishi kindly told her friend. Yes, it's called cucumber salad. Lan Xian scratched her head and giggled with Shishi. But I think I've eaten it before. I've eaten it with my parents in a restaurant. It's called cucumber slices. Lu Xiaoyu said weakly. It's not food. It's not food. Chen Yuxuan saw that the topic was deviating, so he quickly raised his voice and shouted, "I'll show you." It was okay to watch a performance. The three girls stopped their chattering and stared at Chen Yuxuan in unison. Chen Yuxuan wasn't as nervous as the other boys, and he wasn't as embarrassed as he was when he couldn't sing a song on the bus. This time he really came prepared. Watch carefully, the little boy said confidently. They saw him put the small cucumber on the plate, and then used his spoon as a knife to cut off the two ends of the small cucumber. The cut ends were not wasted, and he directly stuffed them into his mouth. Then Chen Yuxuan, who was chewing the small cucumber, picked up a chopstick, starting from the cut ends, and poked the middle of the small cucumber. Because the small cucumber was not long, and the middle of the cucumber was soft, he quickly poked a hole with the chopstick. Wow! Lu Xiaoyu could not help but exclaim. Actually, it was nothing much. It was just that the little green gourd looked a little miserable after being tormented by him. Of course, the girls were still watching with rapt attention. Chen Yuxuan was making such a big fuss, so Shishi and the others were also very curious about what kind of tricks Chen Yuxuan was going to play. After a while, Chen Yuxuan dredged the deep and long hole in the middle of the small cucumber that he had just poked with the chopstick. Then he put down the chopsticks, held the small cucumber alone, and proudly showed it to Shishi and the others. Look. Then Shishi and the others saw Chen Yuxuan bring over the bowl of meat soup that he had just served. Originally, this was for everyone to drink after dinner, but Chen Yuxuan wanted to drink it now. He held the small cucumber, like a straw, and inserted it into the soup. Then he put the upper part of the cucumber in his mouth and slurped it. Whoa. While drinking the soup, he proudly pointed at his small cucumber, and his mouth made unclear sounds, as if he wanted Shishi and the others to see. Oh, the three girls, Shishi, Lu Xiaoyu, and Lan Xian, never thought that this small cucumber would be used like this. They looked at Chen Yuxuan in surprise, and their three pairs of beautiful eyes were wide open. It was really amazing. After all, this was the first time they had seen someone use such a thick cucumber as a straw. But then Chen Yuxuan became mischievous. Instead of drinking the soup properly, he even puffed up his mouth and began to blow bubbles. The soup splattered everywhere. The one who was most likely to suffer was Shishi, who was sitting in front of him. Shishi reacted very quickly. She hurriedly carried her plate with a lunchbox of hot food on it, and moved it to the other side of Lan Xian, so that she wouldn't be contaminated. Hey, Chen Yuxuan, don't be like this. Shishi pouted and said angrily, I really don't like this. It's very dirty. Seeing this, Lu Xiaoyu hurriedly carried her plate, and moved to Shishi's side. Yes, I also think it's very unhygienic. Lan Xian didn't move. She felt that since Chen Yuxuan wasn't sitting in front of her, she was too lazy to move. But she also loudly supported Shishi. Chen Yuxuan was reprimanded, but he was thick-skinned. After scratching his head, he didn't take it to heart. He picked up his plate and prepared to sit back down. But this action was rejected by the girls. Whether it was Shishi, Lan Xian, or Lu Xiaoyu, they were all girls who were very particular about hygiene. They didn't want Chen Yuxuan to sit in front of them. Of course, they didn't have any objections to Chen Yuxuan sitting in his original position. After all, they just didn't like Chen Yuxuan's unhygienic actions when eating. They didn't directly dislike Chen Yuxuan. Moreover, whether it was Lan Xian or Shishi, they were actually a little interested in Chen Yuxuan's little invention. Do you want to try it too? Chen Yuxuan saw Lan Xian's bright eyes. He took out another small cucumber, and handed it to her generously. Lan Xian was eager to try, but she stopped her. Xian you can't. She said very seriously. Papa said that outside, we can't eat things given by others. If we want to play this, wait until we get home. Let's play together then. All right. Lan Xian glanced at the little cucumber with a hint of reluctance in her eyes, and she hesitated for a long while before withdrawing her hand. Lan Xian and she received the same child safety education. Those picture books were all written by Yang Yi, so she understood everything that she said. If you don't want it, then I'll eat it. Chen Yuxuan saw that Lan Xian didn't want it, so he took the small cucumber back. While muttering indifferently, he pulled down the plastic film and ate it with relish. In the soup bowl next to him, the small cucumber straw was still there. Chen Yuxuan was going to drink the soup with it later. Chapter 1050. In the evening, the two girls came back from school. Lan Xian didn't go home, and she didn't take out her homework to do. After they dropped their school bags, they went to the kitchen while muttering. There was a burst of noise coming from the open kitchen door. What are you doing? Yang Yi felt very strange in the car. At that time, when Lan Xian wanted to say something, she pulled her and said, "Don't say it first." Now that the two girls were mysteriously doing something, he walked into the kitchen and asked with a smile. She and Lan Xian were in front of the refrigerator. The door of the large refrigerator below was open, and the light shone on the two girls' faces. Lan Xian was standing, and she was bending over. The two girls were muttering something, and he didn't know what they were looking for. Hearing her father's voice, she seemed to have a feeling of being caught doing something bad. She straightened up in a panic, and pulled out a black bag that she was carrying. But now there was nowhere to hide it. The little girl was bashful and embarrassed, and she smiled at her father with curved eyes. Hee hee. Laughter can solve a lot of problems. For example, after the little girl smiled for a while, she realized that she didn't seem to have done anything bad. She was just looking for experimental materials with Lan Xian. What are you laughing at? Yang Yi looked at his daughter's silly look and couldn't help but smile. We are looking for small green melons. But we are just looking for big green melons. She explained, holding the black bag. Lan Xian next to her took out a small green melon with thorns. Papa, do we have small green melons at home? P.S. Don't ask why I keep saying green melons. I'm afraid you will misunderstand. After the little girl asked, she looked at her father eagerly. We don't have small green melons. In fact, small green melons are the same as the one you are holding. Do you want to eat green melons fried with vegetables tonight? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. No. We are making a straw that can drink water. Lan Xian waved her fleshy little hand, directly revealing the spoiler. She looked at her friend anxiously. Why did you say it so soon? She should have let her father guess. Do what? Yang Yi was confused, thinking that he had misheard. Hee Papa, let's show you. She said excitedly. She and Lan Xian put the cucumber on the table. However, with their height, although they could reach the table, it was more difficult to operate it. Therefore, she brought two small stools for them to stand on. Yang Yi stood behind them. He wanted to see what the two girls were going to do, but he also wanted to take care of their safety. After all, the stool was not stable. She, why are you still using a spoon? It's much easier to cut it with a knife. But a knife is terrible. Papa said that I can't use a knife by myself. Yang Yi listened to their chatter and helped with a smile. What do you want to do with a knife? Come, let me help you cut it. The kitchen was quite lively, but it didn't take long for it to be about to explode. There was a short silence. She and Lan Xian were looking at Yang Yi expectantly, waiting for his praise. However, Yang Yi's face soon darkened, and he asked exasperatedly, who taught you to make this cucumber straw? A quarter of an hour later, she sat obediently in front of the desk in the living room. When her father suddenly became serious, it was too scary. Although she knew that her father was not angry at her, it was rare for him to be so fierce, and the little girl was still trembling with fear. She tried her best to pretend to be a good student and child. She didn't even dare to move her little butt and could only bury her head in her homework. Then, she secretly pricked up her ears to listen to the movements in the kitchen behind her. Of course, the kitchen door was closed, so she couldn't hear anything from her mother and father's conversation. However, there was still some movement next to her. She turned her head and saw Tong Tong walking over with a grin. He was holding a toy ambulance that was about the size of his palm. Tong Tong was not affected at all. He just realized that his mother wasn't around, and Xiao Guai and Bao Bao had run off to play somewhere, so he came over to play with his sister. She was a little nervous. She raised a finger and shrunk her little head to signal Tong Tong to be quiet. Then she lowered her voice and muttered, "Don't talk. Papa is angry." Tong Tong held his toy with his right hand and placed his left hand on his sister's leg. He looked at his sister with a puzzled expression for a while. Although he didn't quite understand what his sister meant, he could feel that his sister didn't seem to want to play with him. He had no choice but to sit down on the ground next to her and play with his toy. No matter what, he felt very safe with his sister's back. In the kitchen, Murphy didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she tried to persuade Yang Yi, who was angrily preparing to pull out a kitchen knife to reason with that little brat. Okay, calm down. Children don't think so much. It's just cucumbers." In their eyes, cucumbers are no different from pumpkins and watermelons. Murphy said softly, "Children should be taught a lesson. Listen to what Shishi and Xian Air said to me. He even brought 2 small cucumbers and wanted Shishi to try them. How can I not be angry?" Yang Yi said angrily as he huffed through his nose. He even rolled up his sleeves. "Also, I'm telling you, this Chen Yuxuan, I already noticed him during the spring outing." Yang Yi continued to complain to Murphy. "When he saw that our daughter was pretty, he kept coming to our side. Let me use a perhaps inappropriate analogy. He was like a little peacock, swaying in front of me with its tail open. At that time, I wanted to take him out and beat him up." Murphy looked at Yang Yi's gnashing teeth and couldn't help but find it funny. She reached out to pull Yang Yi's hand and gently stroked Yang Yi's chest. She said softly, "Okay, don't always fight and kill. Don't think of things in a complicated way. They're all 6 or 7-year-old children. How can it be so complicated? And you said it yourself, this child is usually quite naughty, so these are all very normal. I can't control others, but he's not allowed to do this to Shishi." Yang Yi gradually calmed down after being comforted by Murphy. However, he still couldn't help but say this resentfully. "But you can't hit or scold other people's children. After all, he might not have done it on purpose. He's just like Shishi when she came back tonight. He learned something new and wanted to show it in front of his classmates." Murphy slowly persuaded Yang Yi. "We shouldn't make a fuss about it. Look, you scared Shishi and Xian Air tonight. Just now, when Xian Air went back, she even asked me if she couldn't eat at our house today because Papa Yang was angry today." When Yang Yi heard this, the image of a fat girl in a dilemma appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but smile. Murphy was able to calm Yang Yi down when he was in a state of rage. She knew Yang Yi too well. When she saw Yang Yi calm down, she said with a smile, "Of course, we can't let this kind of thing happen. If we don't take it seriously, I'm afraid Shishi won't know how to deal with it if she really encounters a problem in the future. If she really encounters a problem, then I..." Yang Yi glanced at the kitchen knives next to him. "These knives seem too short." "Hey, are you stupid? Don't say such angry words. We don't want anything bad to happen to Shishi." Murphy said angrily, "What I mean is, we have to take precautions. You have to think about how to tactfully tell Shishi about this matter. If there are bad people who have bad intentions in the future, how should she deal with it? You have so many ideas. I believe you can handle it properly." Yang Yi was a little disappointed that he couldn't really sharpen his knives. However, he was a rational person now. He could understand the reason that Murphy said. He was indeed a little impulsive just now. "Okay, let me think about it." Yang Yi smiled and reached out to hug Murphy. He said softly, "Thank you." Murphy also hugged Yang Yi with relief. A lot of words were said without saying. Chapter 1051. Her mother came out of the kitchen, and not long after, The tempting aroma of ginger and onion oil floated out of the kitchen. Cece knew that her father had already started preparing dinner in the kitchen. Is Papa still angry? The little girl thought anxiously. However, it seemed that her mother didn't want to tell her about the progress of persuasion. She just walked out with a smile, which gave Shishi a positive signal. After the little girl finished her homework, she didn't know what to do. Should she put down her pen and play with her brother while waiting for dinner? Or should she continue to sit at the desk and study hard like a good student? Shishi knew that her father liked her to be obedient. She couldn't be too naughty. Fortunately, Murphy seemed to see Shishi's dilemma. She came over and asked Shishi if she had finished her homework. Then she said with a smile, "Since you've finished your homework, get up and have a rest. By the way, your papa asked you to go to the kitchen after finishing your homework. Don't be afraid. Your papa won't be angry with you." Murphy comforted the little girl who was a little hesitant. The half-closed kitchen door was gently pushed open. Shishi's delicate little face carefully appeared behind the door. She stuck her head out, blinked her big eyes, and looked at her father who was busy. She had to see if her father was still as angry as before. What caught Shishi's eyes was her father's kind and gentle smile. Shishi couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that she was discovered by her father as soon as she opened the door. "Shishi, you're here?" Yang Yi laughed heartily, waved to her and said, "Come here and try the slow-roasted pork made by your father. Let's see if it tastes good." Yang Yi had been working on this slow-roasted pork this afternoon. One had to know that this was not a barbecue, but a roasting. He had applied a lot of ingredients, as well as a sweet and sour sauce made from fruits and vegetables. The pork was wrapped in foil, and then sent into the oven to roast. The process was very complicated. Although it was troublesome, the Western-style barbecue tasted good. Moreover, cutting the barbecue was also a pleasure, as long as no salt was sprinkled. Yang Yi cut the caramel-colored barbecue, and the soft, tender, and juicy pork inside was turned over with steaming hot air. "Wow, it smells so good." Shishi smelled the rich fragrance of the meat and couldn't help but go to her father's side. She held the kitchen counter with her two small hands and opened her eyes wide, watching her father cut the barbecue. Her father's warm attitude just now made the little girl feel relieved. As long as her father wasn't angry, she could still be familiar with him. She could act coquettishly and rely on him. Yang Yi cut a piece of the most tender barbecue pork with the knife, and dipped it in the sour plum sauce that he had prepared earlier. Holding it in his hands, he bent over to Shishi and said with a smile, "Come try it. See how good Daddy's cooking is." Shishi was already craving for it. At this moment, she forgot to speak. She only cared about opening her small mouth and biting the warm barbecue pork into her mouth. The sour and sweet taste of the sour plum sauce stimulated Shishi's taste buds, and the delicious taste of the meat filled the little girl's senses. Not only was it fragrant, but the texture was also top-notch. With a light bite, the soft pork spread out like ice cream, and with a bite of the high moisture content of the pork, the gravy overflowed. At this moment, satisfaction was written all over the little girl's face. "Is it good?" Yang Yi saw that she had forgotten to speak, so he asked with a smile. Shishi nodded vigorously. Then she leaned on the counter and anxiously stamped her feet. It seemed that she couldn't open her mouth to speak. She was almost suffocated. In addition to being anxious, she raised her small head with satisfaction and smiled radiantly with her father. "Later, let's send a portion to Air and her parents to try. Then we'll come back to eat, okay?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Daddy made a lot of barbecue today. We can't finish it alone." Shishi finally chewed up the barbecue pork in her mouth and swallowed it. At this time, she couldn't wait to giggle with her father and said, "It's so delicious. Daddy, it's really delicious. I like the sour and sweet taste very much." Then okay. Let's also let Air eat it. She should like it very much." It seemed that Cece was almost suffocated from not being able to express her feelings with words just now. Seeing Shishi beaming with joy, Yang Yi secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. After bribing Shishi, Yang Yi tidied up a little. He took off his gloves and squatted down. While helping Shishi tidy her clothes, he looked into the little girl's clear eyes and said softly, "Shishi, Daddy wants to apologize to you. I suddenly got angry just now. Maybe I scared you." She didn't expect that her father would suddenly take the initiative to apologize. She blinked her eyes in surprise, but soon she reacted. The little girl stepped forward and put her arms around her father's neck. She snuggled into her father's arms and twisted her body like a spoiled child. She smiled and said, "Daddy, it's okay." It was okay. Daddy was so scary just now, but she liked her father who was calm and gentle like he was now. It's all Daddy's fault. Yang Yi rubbed Shishi's little head lovingly and said, "Actually, Daddy didn't lose his temper at you, nor did he blame you in Xian air. Daddy just thinks that it's not very good for you to learn how to use cucumber straws." Shishi snuggled comfortably in her father's arms and sat on her father's knees. She asked curiously why. "Because this is something you can't understand now. When you grow up, you'll understand." Yang Yi smiled and said, "What I want to tell you now is, if you meet someone who talks to you about cucumbers in the future, especially boys or uncles, anyway, other than your parents, what should you do if they talk to you about cucumbers in cucumbers?" "What should I do?" Shishi asked confusedly. "Just like what Daddy told you before. If someone wants to take you somewhere else to play, you should tell Daddy first." Yang Yi said gently, "If you are in a similar situation now, and someone wants to invite you to eat or watch something, you should also say to him, 'I'm sorry, I have to ask for my father's permission first.'" Cece understood. She giggled and said, "I know. Papa is worried that they are bad people. But Chen Yuxuan is not a bad person. He just doesn't like to study. Teacher Li said he is too naughty. Whether they are people we know or not, we have to be careful. After all, we don't know if there are bad people among the people we know," Yang Yi said. "Okay." Shishi grabbed her father's big hand and played with it in front of her. "There's more." Yang Yi held back his laughter and said seriously, "In the future, if you meet someone who talks about cucumbers to you, just tell him that I am not interested in them because my daddy's cooking is the best. He is best at cutting cucumbers, chopping cucumbers, smashing cucumbers, and pickling cucumbers. Well, remember these four, you must tell him." Shishi's eyes lit up and said happily, "Hey Daddy, let me tell you, Xian Air said that before Chen Yuxuan's performance, she said that Daddy will cut the cucumbers into pieces and pickle them with sugar and vinegar. It is super delicious." Yang Yi was stunned for a moment before he laughed. "Is that so? Xian Air did a good job. Cut her a piece of roast pork to eat tonight." Ehe. The little girl didn't know why, but she also laughed with her father. Chapter 1052. After entering April, whether it was The Shawshank Redemption, the animated film Frozen, or I Am a Singer, which was about to be released during the summer vacation, they all carried out an overwhelming amount of publicity. Of course, since March, Jiangnan TV station had been broadcasting various promotional videos for I Am a Singer. Whether it was the introduction video of the luxurious recording studio or the individual promotional videos of several singers, their publicity for I Am a Singer had never been reduced. On the other hand, it could be seen that the advertisements of the influential media and broadcasters on the internet and microbroadcasting were all produced by China Star. After all, they were more skilled at these little tricks. However, some uninvited media were very interested in the two movies related to Yang Yi that were released at the same time during the summer vacation. They did not hesitate to make a comparison between the two movies of completely different genres to guess which one would get a higher box office. The Shawshank Redemption is undoubtedly the most anticipated movie of this summer vacation. Whether it is Yang Yi's storywriting ability, the great director Wu Yayan, or the big-name actors Chen Fengchen, Li Baogua, Jie Yuchen, etc., the box office appeal is far stronger than an animated film without a star as a foil. But Frozen was after all personally invested in by Yang Yi. The story and character design were all written by Yang Yi. And the company that produced the Mantis Shrimp animation also had Yang Yi as a shareholder. Yang Yi has always been good at creating miracles. The animated film that he personally supervised may also be endowed with a certain amount of magic. The box office is very unpredictable. Of course, these public opinions could not affect the publicity of the two movies that were not of the same genre at all. Most of the people who paid attention to the two movies were from two different groups, unless they came purely for Yang Yi's name. After entering April, Murphy also had two concerts scheduled for him. The first concert in April was in Shanghai, which was their familiar home ground. The second concert was in Chengdu, which was Murphy's first concert in Chengdu, although Yang Yi had held a signing event here before. Murphy's concert in Chengdu was scheduled for the end of April. However, the fans' enthusiasm was hard to resist. Every time a limited number of concert tickets were sold out in less than 30 seconds. This speed even surpassed the record of the concert tickets sold in Shanghai. Moreover, according to the technical statistics, most of the fans who bought tickets came from the central and western regions. It seemed that there were also quite a large number of fans from non-coastal regions. The next day after the concert in Shanghai, Yang Yi brought Xixi and Tong Tong back to Jiangxing in a hurry. Xixi couldn't wait any longer. She was worried that she would miss the blooming of her radish flower. Speaking of Xixi's radish flowers, they were a little ill-fated. She had encountered many disasters in the process of planting these radish heads. It could be seen from Xixi's planting diary, March 10th. It's not good. When I went to observe it, I found that one of the radish heads had rotted. I quickly went to find my father. My father said not to worry and that we should treat it. Then we put it on the chopping board. My father used a knife to cut off the rotten part. Then we took a small plate and filled it with water for it to live in. My father also poured salt water on it, saying that it needed to be disinfected. Oh yes, my father also cut off the yellow leaves. I was so sad to see it sick. You have to get better soon. Of course, these were only the diary entries about the radish head's planting. March 14th. The sick radish head finally got better and grew new leaves. My father said that it was because I changed the water for it every day. I'm so happy. March 15th. My father said that the other radish heads were going to get sick too. We need to find another place for them to live. My father taught me to take them out of the soil. I used a toothbrush to bathe them. Then they lived with the sick radish head. Don't get sick. I'm so worried. March 21st. My father said that the radish head has sprouted and can be planted in the soil. March 25th. Something super scary happened. I saw a few little bugs eating the radish head's leaves. I was so angry, but I'm very afraid of the bugs. I asked my father to help me catch the bugs. My father said that you can think of a way yourself. Then I thought, and I thought of using a fan to fan them away. I thought of the Bull Demon King's iron fan and Princess's fan, which could fan them far away. Hee hee, am I very smart? March 26th. Finally, there are no more bugs. I've seen it many times today. There can't be any more bugs eating my radish head. March 29th. Today, I cried because Little Gray was too bad. It broke one of my radish leaves. I asked my father to take a look. My father said that it was very difficult to live. I was so sad that I cried. Later, my father and I buried it under the tree because it would provide nutrients to the tree. The brackets were added by Yang Yi later. Or maybe she didn't know how to write it, and left it blank. Later, she asked Yang Yi and he taught her how to fill it in. April 1st. My father told me a piece of good news. My radish head is going to bloom. Not all of them are going to bloom. Only one is going to bloom, but I'm also very happy. Yes, after experiencing rotting, insect bites, cat steps, and other disasters, a radish head was finally going to bloom. This was something that even Yang Yi felt was a little magical. He thought that radish heads could only bloom radish tassels. He didn't expect one of them to bloom many small flower buds. Perhaps this radish head kept more of the radish's tissue? When Yang Yi cut it, he left more than half of its tissue, because it had some bug eyes. The complicated reason behind this was unknown. In any case, the little girl had only come to Shanghai with her father for a day, but she was a little anxious. She was worried that her radish flowers wouldn't bloom because they were not taken care of and watered for a short day. Therefore, when she woke up early in the morning, she urged her father to hurry home. Murphy still had to attend the follow-up activities, such as the company's arranged meet and greet for lucky fans, and giving them autographed records and blessings. Yang Yi brought the two children home first. When they reached home and got out of the car, Shishi hurried to the place where she planted the radish heads. Soon the little girl cried out in surprise, "Papa, come and see. It's really blooming. It's so beautiful." Yang Yi hugged Tong Tong with his left hand and was about to take out the luggage in the trunk with his right hand. He looked back and saw the little girl with bright eyes and white teeth under the bright sunlight. Her happy smile was like a blooming flower. "Sister." Tong Tong also saw his sister smiling at him. He thought that his sister was calling him, so he grinned happily and patted his father's arm with his chubby little hand. He struggled to get down and go to his sister. Yang Yi saw that Tong Tong was also excited, so he smiled and threw the luggage back into the trunk. He carried Tong Tong and walked to Shishi. However, after complaining, Shishi continued to count with interest. "Let me look again. 1, 2, 3, 4. But it seems that there are more than 4. In order to identify it clearly, she curiously moved closer and reached out to touch the flower. Only then did she happily turn her head to report to her father, No, it's still 4 petals because I was wrong. I thought this was 5 petals, but it's not. There is a flower beside it, and I mistook the petals of this flower for this flower." The little girl blabbered on about her discovery. Then she happily smiled at her father and waited for his praise. However, Tong Tong pulled his sister's hand and said, 1, 1. 1 what? Shishi was puzzled. Tong Tong looked up with a serious expression. He used his empty right hand to gesture in the air. It was as if he was pressing down. With a clear rhythm he muttered, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. It was as if he was complaining that his sister did not recite the number 5. He looked at his sister and repeated the number 5 loudly. Perhaps because of their age difference, Shishi understood her brother's meaning. She giggled and said, "No, little brother, there is no 5. I was counting the petals of the flower with Papa. You were reciting the jingle. Mom recited it for you. I'll recite it for you too." The little girl excitedly raised her voice and recited, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you can't hit the tiger, you can hit the squirrel. When Tong Tong heard his sister recite the jingle, it was as if he had found a soulmate. He beamed with joy and clapped his hands. Then he said in an inarticulate voice, "Bite the pine. It's the squirrel." Shishi tried hard to correct him. Shishi's radish blooming was a big deal. Not only did the little girl admire and record it, but she also could not help but announce it to the world. At noon, after Shishi finished her lunch, before going to bed, she used WeChat to call her mother, grandpa, little aunt, and her grandfather who was far away in America. She told them that the radish she planted had bloomed. "The radish has bloomed, then your radish can't be eaten. It's too old." On the other side of the camera, Emohenian's face was dark. He probably did not understand how the front camera of the phone could be aimed at his face. However, this did not prevent him from instructing Shishi. "Ask Yang Yi, your father, to plant the seeds that have bloomed. In a few months, there will be radishes to eat. Seeds eat radishes, okay?" The little girl listened obediently. She held the phone and nodded seriously. Forget it, forget it. You may not remember if I tell you. Give the phone to your father. I'll talk to him." Emohenian clearly underestimated his granddaughter's memory. However, Shishi still obediently ran back and handed the phone to her father. "Papa, Grandpa wants to talk to you." After a while, Yang Yi explained to Emohenian that he was not going to plant radishes for Shishi. This was just one of Shishi's science assignments. "Shishi, instead of sleeping at noon, you actually went outside to look at the radish blooming. You even disturbed Grandpa's rest. Do you know that it's already very late abroad?" After Yang Yi put away the phone, he reached out and rubbed the little girl's hair. "Okay, then can I call Sister Xiaowei, little Yu and the others? Also Chi-Chi, Shiyun Zhaoyu," Shishi said to her father with a smile. "No, it's noon now. You have to take a nap. Look, your brother is already taking a nap." Yang Yi simply picked up the little girl and walked upstairs. He smiled and said, "If you want to tell your other friends, you can wait until the afternoon or tomorrow when you go to school. You can take a few photos. Daddy will help you develop them and show them to them." Okay. Shishi was a little disappointed. However, she suddenly felt that her father's suggestion was not bad, so she happily agreed. In the afternoon, when Yang Yi was talking to Murphy on the phone, Shishi ran over and said that she wanted to go to Lan Xian's house to play. Okay, then be careful. Yang Yi agreed. Usually, the two little girls would run around by themselves, so the villa area was quite safe. However, what Yang Yi didn't expect was that not long after, before he finished his phone call, he saw Steamed Bun, who had been lying peacefully in the living room, wagging his tail and running out. Ehe. Shishi, where are your radish blooms? Lan Xian's loud voice could be heard from afar. Chapter 1054. On Monday, Yang Yi made a rare business trip to Guangdong Province. Together with Fu Jun and Lan Caocai, he attended the signing and release ceremony for the acquisition and expansion of Wanjia Yibai's online shopping mall. Of course, Yang Yi was only the second shareholder of Sahara, and met with a few of the main leaders of Guangdong Province. He did not show his face at the press conference. This kind of thing to be in the limelight and improve his image was meaningless to Yang Yi. Lan Caocai was very interested. Speaking of which, the negotiation process was very short. After all, both sides were willing to cooperate. Moreover, Guangdong Province was very satisfied to see Sahara's plan to support small micro-enterprises and individual merchants. They were also willing to make a big concession. After some discussion, they also gave Sahara's online shopping mall a lot of favorable conditions. For example, at the junction of Buddha City and Yangqing City, they gave the Sahara Group a piece of land of about 2,000 acres by the mountains and rivers for them to build their future headquarters. Although this piece of land was not immediately handed over to Sahara Group, and Sahara also expected to wait a year or two for itself to go public before starting to plan for the headquarters. How could Sahara not accept the benefits directly determined in the contract? In addition, according to Yang Yi's instructions, Fu Jun set up the Sahara Taobao Shopping Mall project team and reached an agreement with Guangdong Province. In the future, Guangdong Province would fully support Sahara and give a certain amount of tax relief to small merchants who opened online stores in Sahara. This could be said to have established a golden brand for Sahara, enough to attract many people to join. However, the entire negotiation process was not smooth sailing. Fu Jun and the Guangdong provincial government had different opinions on the employee arrangement of the original Wanjia Yibai's online shopping mall. The Guangdong provincial government still hoped that they would properly settle the more than 2,000 laid-off employees. It would be best if all of them were incorporated under their banner. After all, from the government's point of view, if you bought a company, you could not buy an empty shell and then leave more than 2,000 people behind to give the government a headache, right? However, for a technology company, layoffs and staff reduction were very familiar. In order to maintain rapid development, they needed a cruel mechanism of survival of the fittest. Moreover, the group of employees recruited by Zhu Wang, who had just graduated from university, did not meet Sahara's requirements in terms of ability. After all, most of the outstanding computer talents in Guangdong Province had flowed into the Sahara or other top technology companies when they had just graduated. How many outstanding talents could a small and inconspicuous Wanjia recruit? Therefore, accepting these 2,000 people was more of a burden for the Sahara Desert. Letting them enjoy the same level of benefits as the other employees was also unfair to the other employees. At one point, this issue had been on the negotiating table for nearly a week. That was until Fu Jun made a concession. Of course, this was also Yang Yi's idea. He asked Fu Jun to evaluate the 2,000 people. Those who met the standard would be assigned to the Sahara Express that Li Long was in charge of. In the future, if their ability improved, they could also choose to be transferred to the head office. As for the rest who did not meet the standards, Yang Yi also asked Fu Jun to take them in. He was going to set up a public welfare organization under the Sahara Taobao Mall. He had other uses for these people. On Monday and Tuesday, there was a continuous drizzle in Jiangcheng. Finally, on Wednesday, the sky finally cleared up, and the warm sun shone on the earth. The sun was not too hot, so there were some traces of rain on the campus of Huijia Primary School. Under the shade of the trees, there were puddles of rainwater that had not been dried by the sun. The wet leaves stuck to the ground, making it look a little messy. Oh, there are so many leaves. Early in the morning, the voices of a few girls broke the silence of the world. Cece's mutterings were echoed by Lu Xiaoyu. She also pouted and grumbled. That's right. There are so many leaves. How long will it take to sweep them? At this time, Shishi's rich experience in helping her father with housework came in handy. She smiled and said, No, little Yuer, let me tell you. When we sweep these leaves in the water, we can't use brooms like ours. We have to use my papa's super long and super big brooms. My papa said that they are made from bamboo that pandas eat. That's right. Shishi became more and more excited as she spoke. She beamed with joy as she gestured the giant pandas baring teeth and brandishing claws. She giggled and said, My papa also showed me a video of a giant panda. The giant panda will bite these brooms because they are made of bamboo. Lu Xiaoyu listened attentively. When she came back to her senses, her words hit the nail on the head. But we don't have such a big broom. We only have this kind of broom. Lu Xiaoyu raised the plastic broom in her hand and said worriedly. That's right. Shishi sighed and said helplessly. I don't like to use this kind of broom to sweep the floor. It gets dirty when it comes in contact with water. Hurry up and sweep the floor. The class is going to start soon. At this time, Li Ruolin, who had come to supervise the morning reading, came over. Seeing that the children were still chatting there, she reminded them helplessly. Oh, the teacher is here. With the panicked cries of the little girls, they all threw themselves into the work. Shishi and Lu Xiaoyu were the same. Although it was inconvenient to sweep the floor with a plastic broom, they still had to work hard. They didn't want to be criticized by the teacher. However, there were still some boys in Shishi's group who were more mischievous. For example, Jiang Chen. This little boy was short and lacked a domineering aura compared to Chen Yuxuan, but he was also very active. Usually in class, he would make a lot of small movements. After sweeping the floor for a while, he became restless again. His dark eyes revealed a sly look as he silently approached Shishi and Lu Xiaoyu, who were carefully sweeping the floor. Then he deliberately waved the broom and swept the leaves and mud into the air. Oh, Shishi and Lu Xiaoyu were caught off guard. Some leaves were suddenly thrown onto their feet and shoes, scaring the girls. Jiang Chen, what are you doing? You are so annoying. Not only Shishi and Lu Xiaoyu, but two other girls were also attacked by him. They all angrily denounced the naughty guy. Jiang Chen, you have to sweep the floor seriously. No pranks. If you do this again, the teacher will punish you to sweep the floor alone. Everyone else can go back and rest. Fortunately, Li Ruolin was also supervising them. When she noticed the situation, she immediately criticized him. The naughty boy lowered his head and became obedient. At this time, a tall male teacher walked by. When he saw Li Ruolin, his eyes lit up and he smiled. Teacher Li, long time no see. Right, I have an injured bird here. Do you want to take care of it? Chapter 1055. Zhao Chuming was a PE teacher in Huijia Primary School. He was currently teaching the 4th and 5th grade classes. However, in the previous school year, before Li Ruolin was transferred to teach the 1st grade, he had taught Li Ruolin's PE class. Therefore, the two of them could be considered old acquaintances. This morning, he was in charge of inspecting the school's hygiene and cleanliness. However, when he passed by the grassy field behind the first teaching block, Zhao Chuming heard a very weak chirp, chirp, chirp sound. When he looked in the direction of the sound, he found that it was not on the tree, but in the grass. It was a little bird with brownish-red fur and dark brown feathers. Its right wing was drooping on the ground, and it seemed to be injured. Zhao Chuming looked at it on the ground for a while, then gently held it in his hand. After all, this little bird was really small. It was not even half the size of Teacher Zhao's palm. However, it looked very strong. With its round head and chubby body, it seemed to have become fat like a ball. It did not even have a neck. It was very lovable. It had to be said that Teacher Zhao was a kind person who was tall and could smell roses. He was prepared to carry it back to their office in the gymnasium, so that the male teachers could take care of this injured little bird. However, on the way back to the gymnasium, Zhao Chuming unexpectedly saw Li Ruolin standing in the hygiene area of their class. Teacher Li's charming appearance immediately attracted Teacher Zhao's attention. She just casually used her hand to gently brush her hair behind her ear. This unintentional flirtatious look made Teacher Zhao's soul fall into a daze. He had not interacted with her for a long time. She was still so youthful, beautiful, and intellectual. Therefore, Teacher Zhao could not help but walk over and use this little bird as a topic to strike up a conversation with Li Ruolin. After Zhao Chuming said those words, he quickly reacted and wanted to slap himself. F***CK. Is this how you talk to a girl? Are you being a hooligan, or trying to strike up a conversation? Fortunately, he was holding an injured little bird in his hand. This little bird immediately attracted all of Li Ruolin's attention. Why would she pay attention to his words just now? Teacher Zhao, the little bird is injured? What kind of little bird is this? Li Ruolin took a step forward in surprise and looked at it carefully. Zhao Chuming replied in embarrassment. I don't know, but it feels like a sparrow. It shouldn't be a sparrow. I've seen sparrows before. Sparrows have more colorful feathers than this one. This little bird looks very beautiful. Li Ruolin shook her head. Teacher Li, if you like it, then I'll leave this little bird to you. I'm just a boar. I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of it. Zhao Chuming pretended to be generous and extended his hand. In fact, he was looking forward to Li Ruolin saying something like, let's take care of it together. Of course, the possibility of that happening was relatively small, but as a man, he had to be more generous in front of a woman. Just as Zhao Chuming was staring at Li Ruolin, waiting for her response, an excited cry suddenly came from beside them. Wow! Little bird! Lu Xiaoyu was the first to discover it. She cried out excitedly and even reached out to pull Shishi to let her take a look. Soon, the children uniformly surrounded them. Not only Shishi, but all the children from the first grades class 3 who were involved in the cleaning were looking at Zhao Chuming with shining eyes. To be precise, they were looking at the little bird in his hand. Teacher, what kind of little bird is this? Teacher, what's wrong with this little bird? Teacher, did you hurt this little bird? Zhao Chuming was almost drowned out by the chattering of the children. He was a little overwhelmed by the questions. Fortunately, Li Ruolin took the initiative to help explain, and the children's spearheads moved away from him. Teacher, you must take care of this little bird. It's so pitiful. Shishi's lively big eyes revealed a look of pity. Her two small hands hugged the plastic broom to her chest as she pitifully said to Li Ruolin, let me take care of it. I've taken care of little birds before. Jiangchen said enthusiastically. My dad can take care of it, and when its wings are healed, it can fly. Shishi looked back at Jiangchen. For this naughty little boy who loved to play pranks, Shishi was obviously not at ease. Therefore, the little girl also raised her voice and begged Li Ruolin, teacher, can you take care of it for me? I'll take care of it very carefully. The little girl's pitiful begging eyes were difficult to refuse. However, coincidentally, behind Shishi, there were several children who also wanted to take care of the little bird. The noise almost drowned Li Ruolin and Zhao Chuming. Like this. Li Ruolin carefully took the little bird from Zhao Chuming's hand and said sternly, you can't make noise because the little bird is still very fragile. It's injured and needs to rest. If you make noise, you'll scare it. Yes, you can't make noise. Shishi quickly nodded, looked around at her classmates and reminded them. You can't make noise. Jiangchen glared at her unhappily. Shishi looked at the boy and was a little annoyed, but considering the feelings of the little bird, she could only pout angrily and didn't argue with him. Let's finish our work first. The teacher will take care of the little bird, and then we'll see how to take care of it during class. We'll help it recover so that it can return to nature as soon as possible, okay? Li Ruolin said with a smile. She already had an idea. Li Ruolin didn't plan to take care of the little bird herself, nor did she plan to entrust it to any child. She planned to let all the students of the first grade class 3 take care of it together. Wasn't this a good opportunity to cultivate the love and responsibility of children? However, Shishi misunderstood the teacher's words. She thought she had to perform well to win the teacher's approval and obtain the right to take care of the little bird. Okay, little fishy, let's go sweep the floor. She suddenly became super energetic. The little girl ran first and tried her best to sweep the leaves with water that were the most difficult to sweep. Li Rulin saw that the little guys consciously went to sweep the floor and didn't continue to buzz around her. She finally let out a sigh of relief and looked at Zhao Chuming with a bitter smile. There was a short break between the morning reading class and the first class. The students on duty, who went out to sweep the floor, came back with their tools. Excian air, Excian air. She didn't even have time to put the broom back in the back of the classroom. She hugged the broom and excitedly ran to Lan Xian's seat. She chattered. Let me tell you, we just saw a little bird. Yes, an injured little bird. Lu Xiaoyu teased Xi as if she was performing a crosstalk with her. But it's super cute. It's only this big round, and its eyes are this small. Xi put the broom aside and gestured with her hands and feet. It's very pretty. It's red. Lu Xiaoyu nodded and smiled. It's not red. It's brownish red. Xi corrected her. She had learned to draw and knew the difference between colors. But it's so pitiful. Its right wing is injured. It can't fly. Lu Xiaoyu's expression was on point. In an instant, she changed from happy to sad. Chapter 1056. I want to tell Mr. Li that we can raise a bird because we have a big house. The bird will like it, Xi said expectantly. Lu Xiaoyu sighed regretfully and said, My house can't do that. My dad won't let me raise a pet. But if the bird lives in our house, you can also come to my house to play. That way you can see the bird. Xi enthusiastically helped her friend think of a solution, as if she had already brought the injured bird home. Although Lan Xian was also curious about the bird, she wasn't that excited. She sat calmly in her chair, looking at Xi and Lu Xiaoyu for a while. Her head was also spinning. Finally, she waited for a break in the conversation between Xi and Lu Xiaoyu. She hit the nail on the head and asked, But Xi, you already have 3 cats at home. How can you raise a bird? The joy on Xi's face froze. The little girl frowned slightly, thinking about Lan Xian's words. Yes. Lu Xiaoyu's reaction was more direct. Because she wasn't the one who wanted to raise a bird, she exclaimed. I've seen on TV. Cats will catch birds to eat. Xi also knew. So the little girl was now very confused. She muttered. But we can raise the bird in a cage. We used to raise little goldfish at home, and nothing happened. If Yang Yi was here to hear this, he would definitely cover his face with his hands. A string of inner monologues would appear on his forehead. Daughter, you don't know. It's not that your little goldfish is fine. It's that you think it's fine. Of course, Xi and her friends didn't have a chance to discuss it now, because the first class had started. The math teacher, Lu Xianxian, had already walked in from outside with a textbook under his arm. Xi and Lu Xiaoyu hurriedly put the cleaning tools in their hands at the back of the classroom, and then hurriedly sat back in their seats. They couldn't act too naughty. If they did, the teacher wouldn't like it, and they wouldn't have the chance to take care of the injured bird. The language class was in the 3rd period, but when the 1st period ended, Xi and the others couldn't help but go to the teacher's office to visit the injured bird. Is it really that beautiful? Du Yuqian asked curiously on the way. It's true, it's true. It's just like the chick my grandpa raises, but the chick is bigger and yellow. It's smaller and cuter. Xi turned sideways and skipped forward, excitedly describing to her little friend. However, they did not expect that this injured bird had already become the star character of the 1st grade teacher's office. When they entered, they saw many teachers standing beside Li Rulin's desk, talking and laughing. Beside them, there were also some subject representatives who had come to hand in their homework to join in the fun. So many people. Xi immediately felt a sense of crisis and looked at those people nervously. When they squeezed in, Xi saw that the injured bird had already moved into a small wire bird cage. Yang Shi, Lan Xian, Lu Xiaoyu. Du Yuqian is here too? Li Rulin saw the 4 girls and smiled. Are you here to see the bird? Xi and the others quickly nodded. Li Rulin smiled and said, Don't worry. Teacher Zhao brought a bird cage over just now. Now it has a place to live. Then teacher, what does the bird eat? Is it very hungry now? Du Yuqian and Lan Xian were both staring at the bird that they had never seen before. Instead, it was Lu Xiaoyu who asked in a low voice. Just now a teacher gave some breadcrumbs. Look, it's in the small basin in its cage. But it doesn't dare to eat yet. It's probably still a little afraid of strangers. Li Ruolin pointed at the trembling bird in the middle of the cage and smiled. But don't birds eat small worms? Shishi's two small hands clung to the edge of the teacher's desk and asked in confusion. It eats a lot of things. Bread can be eaten, and so can breadworms. By the way, I just asked a natural science teacher, who knows more about these things. This is a common bird in Jiangcheng. It's called the brown-headed crow, Li Ruolin said with a smile. Shishi's big bright eyes blinked. She suddenly had an idea and said happily, Teacher, I know. We can call it Xiaoya. Shishi didn't care what the bird's scientific name was. To a girl of this age, whether it was a crow, a sparrow, or a brown-headed crow, they were all birds. There was no difference. Moreover, she felt that calling it Xiaoya sounded better. Hey, can you guys wait a moment? Du Yuqian said anxiously. Teacher, what's the bread worm you mentioned? Will bread grow worms? Then I won't dare to eat bread in the future. The break between classes was very short, and Cici and the others had to go back to class very soon. After that, they endured until the third class before they saw teacher Li Ruolin carrying a bird cage and bringing Xiaoya into the classroom. Bird. Whether it was the children who had seen the bird before, the children who had only heard about it from the former, or the children who had only seen the bird now, they all cried out excitedly. Suddenly, the classroom was as lively as a market. It was only after the bell rang that they barely suppressed their excitement and quieted down. Students, I believe you have heard about this bird. It was this morning. Li Ruolin smiled and introduced the bird to the students from the time it was discovered to the present situation. Then, she turned around and wrote 4 words on the blackboard. Brown-headed crow. This is a bird that is mainly distributed in our country. It's also relatively common in Jiangcheng. What does it eat? Actually, it's an omnivore. It usually eats beetles, insect eggs, or smaller insects. It also eats some fruits or seeds of plants. Of course, now that it's injured and can't fly to hunt by itself, we can also feed it fine corn flour or bird feed. Some fruits are also okay. It can peck at them by itself. Li Ruolin explained so much without stopping. Of course, it was not because she was familiar with this bird, but because she secretly took a few glances at a guide on the podium. It was written for her by her teacher in the natural science class. When Li Ruolin was explaining seriously, the other children listened with their little mouths open. However, Shishi was very serious about taking notes in her little notebook. When the teacher mentioned that the bird ate fruits, the children raised their hands and said enthusiastically, I have an apple. I have a snow pear. I have a yellow peach. They fought over it as if they wanted to share their lunch fruit with the bird. Seeing that all of you are so enthusiastic about this bird, the teacher is very touched. Li Ruolin pressed her hands together, indicating for them to stop arguing. She smiled and said, So this time, the teacher has decided to give all of you, the students of the first grade, class 3, a glorious and arduous task. Hearing this, Wang Lele, who was more upright below the stage, had already puffed out his chest and listened attentively. The teacher hopes that everyone will take care of this bird together. Oh right, when the first class ended, Yangshi even named it Xiaoya. The teacher left Xiaoya in the classroom, and asked everyone to take care of it, feed it, and accompany it to recuperate. Li Ruolin's voice was filled with tenderness and passion, echoing in the classroom. Finally, she said, Then when its wings are healed, we will send it back to nature together so that it can fly freely and return to the sky where it belongs, okay? Shishi was very happy at first because the teacher had used her name for Xiaoya, but later on, she was disappointed. She couldn't raise Xiaoya at home. Originally, the little girl had already made beautiful plans for the bird's life in her house. She could ask her father to build a beautiful nest for it, and then when she went to exercise with her father in the morning, she could take it to see the scenery and bask in the sun. But now, these beautiful ideas could not be realized because the teacher did not agree to let her bring Xiaoya home. However, Shishi quickly recovered from her disappointment, because she realized that although she did not get Xiaoya, she did not lose Xiaoya either. Xiaoya lived in the class, so she could often see Xiaoya. And this was also good because she did not have to worry about the 3 cats at home eating Xiaoya. There were no cats in the class. Although there was a robot cat drawn on the blackboard at the back, it only liked to eat tongluoyaki. I have to ask Papa to see what Xiaoya needs, whether she wants to see a doctor, whether she wants to cover herself with a blanket. Xishi's little head was spinning rapidly, and the little girl's expression became positive again. Right now, the teacher was on the podium, collecting the list of students who were mainly responsible for taking care of the bird. The other students also had to help, but the main responsibility was still the students of this care group. They had to divide the responsibilities so that the little guys would not only have 30% of the enthusiasm. Moreover, with a sense of responsibility and the right arrangements, this bird could be continuously taken care of. Young Shi, are you willing to be a member of the care group to take care of Xiaoya? Li Rulan asked. She knew that Xishi liked this bird very much, but at this time, the little girl seemed to be a little distracted, so she asked directly. Yes, yes. Xishi stood up happily. The little girl puffed out her small chest and nodded seriously. She said, I will definitely take good care of Xiaoya. Chapter 1057. There were quite a number of children who signed up for the care group. Those who raised their hands accounted for more than half of the total number. After all, children of this age all had a pure and flawless heart. Of course, it was unknown how long their enthusiasm would last. Li Rulan spent some time to divide the children into teams. There were a total of 5 teams, which corresponded to Monday to Friday. Each team was responsible for taking care of the birds for a day. Moreover, each team had a class committee member as the team leader. Xishi, of course, also became the team leader. In addition to her, there were 5 other team members, including Lu Xiaoyu and Wang Lele. Their team was responsible for taking care of the birds on Tuesday. Xishi, for the first time, felt her presence as a literature committee member and the benefits of being a class committee member. Although it was already Wednesday and Cici and the others were not in charge of taking care of the little birds, the little ones were still very enthusiastic. After class, they crowded in front of the bird cage, discussing and quarreling with each other. Can you guys stop arguing? Xiaoya needs to sleep. You see, it's not in good spirits. After it was injured, it must be in pain and wants to rest. Xishi's eyebrows drooped slightly as she worriedly appealed to everyone. Xishi's words were quite effective. Other than Jiang Chun and Chen Yuxuan, the other children were willing to listen to Xishi's command. Of course, Jiang Chun and Chen Yuxuan did not cause trouble at this time. They were worried about the birds and obediently shut their mouths. Xishi, let me tell you, you have to feed the birds water, Wang Lele whispered on the side. Feed them water? Xishi didn't understand at first. Wang Lele nodded vigorously. Under everyone's surprised gaze, he said seriously, Yes, birds need to drink water. Our family used to raise a beautiful pigeon, but I didn't give it any water to drink, so it died. He was dead. Such a terrifying result. Immediately, the little guys started to panic. I have water, I'll give it water to drink. Xishi reacted the quickest. She quickly ran back to her seat and took out the water bottle that she usually drank from. Here. Wang Lele pointed to a small blue barrel at the bottom of the birdcage and said. He looked into Xishi's eyes and blinked, but he had no intention of making a move himself. Xishi didn't know that Wang Lele actually liked it, but was also afraid of it. He had raised pigeons before, but he always let his parents take care of them. He was afraid that if he reached his hand in, it would peck him with its sharp beak. Xishi didn't care. She only cared about how to take good care of the bird. She opened the birdcage and reached in to take the small blue bucket. Fortunately, although the brown-headed raven was small, it was actually a lively and brave bird. When Xishi put her hand in, it only tilted its head slightly, looked at Xishi, and chirped weakly. Close the door, or it will run away. Du Yuqian and the other girls anxiously shouted, but they were just making blind suggestions. Xishi filled the small blue barrel with the water that she drank and stuffed it back to the bird. Moreover, Shishi pushed it and placed it in front of the bird. Under the urging of her friends, Shishi quickly closed the bird cage, afraid that Xiaoyu would run out. Will it drink? Cece looked at the bird cage expectantly and muttered in a low voice. Beside her, Liao Qianqian was kneeling on a chair, her two arms supporting her cheeks on the table. She was Lan Xian's deskmate. When she heard Shishi's worry, she kindly said, Shishi, it might not be so fast. It hasn't recognized us yet. It treats us as strangers. It can't eat food given by strangers. But perhaps it was thirsty, or perhaps Shishi had some magical powers. The bird tilted its head left and right, not knowing what it was looking at. After pondering for a while, it slowly stepped on its thin little feet, walked over, and took a sip of water. It drank. It drank. Before Shishi could feel happy, the boys behind her cheered excitedly. Wang Lele was so excited that his little face was red. Not only did it drink water, after the bird drank its fill, it even took a sip of water and combed its hair. Obviously, it was more energetic than before. Shishi was overjoyed like her friends. Moreover, she still remembered what Liao Qianqian said just now. The girl turned her head around happily and said to Liao Qianqian, Qianqian, looks like Xiaoyu is willing to treat us as good friends. Yang Yi only found out about the story of Xiaoyu when he went to pick up Shishi and Lan Xian in the evening. I really want to bring Xiaoyu home to live, but Xian said that cats eat birds. But Papa, our family Xiao Guai, Xiao Hui, and Dodo are so obedient. They won't eat Xiaoyu, right? Shishi was still thinking about this. After returning home, she saw Xiao Guai walking through the living room with its big fat butt, so she ran to ask her father. They won't eat birds. These guys have been raised to be picky. Not to mention birds, they won't even eat mice. Yang Yi smiled and said. Murphy heard this and quickly waved her hand and said, You can't say that. Although they won't eat, after all, their nature is there. If you really put the bird at home, it may still suffer. I saw a micro-broadcast 2 days ago. It said that cats treat themselves as part of our family. They feel that they have the obligation to hunt for food for the family, so they will catch some mice, birds, and so on and give them to you. Yang Yi suddenly understood. He smiled and said to Murphy, Yes, you also showed it to me. That photo. When I woke up in the morning, I found a dead mouse beside my bed. Then we can't raise Xiaoyu at home. Shishi was anxious and worried. She said, Xiaoyu is so small. It can't beat Xiao Guai and the others. Also, I'm afraid that Steamed Bun will bully it. Steamed Bun, who was lying on the sideboard, raised his head and looked at the little master with a confused expression. Papa thinks that your teacher's idea is pretty good. Let you and your classmates take care of the bird together, instead of only you being able to see the bird. Everyone can help the bird recover. How good is that? Yang Yi said with a smile. It's called Xiaoyu because the teacher said that it's a brown-headed crow, but I don't know why it's called that. Shishi twisted her little butt, pouted her little mouth and said sadly, But if Xiaoyu lives in school, won't it be lonely? Also, I'm worried if it will be scared tonight. I can't accompany it in school because at night, I'm also scared. There's no such thing, little bird. Yes, Xiaoyu is different from us humans. It's also different from Xiao Guai and Steamed Bun. Yang Yi comforted gently. It won't be scared. It used to live alone in the wild. Also, it wants to sleep peacefully at night. It's already very tired from playing with you guys during the day. It's okay, you go do your homework first. Tonight, you can come to the study. Papa and you can look at the information together. We'll come up with a very detailed plan to raise Xiaoyu. This way, you can take good care of Xiaoyu. Yang Yi rubbed Shishi's little head and said with a smile. And then, Shishi nodded her head and a smile appeared on her face. Chapter 1058. The next morning, as usual, Yang Yi woke up Shishi early in the morning, and went to the lake in the villa area to run, exercise, and practice 2 sets of martial arts. After the little girl finished exercising, her forehead was sweating and her naughty bangs were firmly stuck. However, she came back with her father and was not in a hurry to go back to rest or take a bath. Papa, Papa! The little girl seemed to have thought of something. She stretched out her hand to pull her father and brought him to her planting area. Yang Yi looked at Shishi, who was pulling his hand as if she was pulling a cart. He raised his eyebrows in amusement and asked, "What are you doing? Do you want to harvest the vegetables you planted? Now that the new soybean sprouts you planted are ready to eat, do you want to cut some of them today and make a side dish?" Yang Yi strongly approved of Shishi planting these vegetables. Moreover, the little girl insisted on it for more than a month. Every day, she diligently weeded and watered them. However, there was a problem. Shishi was reluctant to eat these beautiful vegetables that she planted. Fortunately, her family was not poor, so the fruits of her labor could be preserved. Hearing her father's words, she quickly shook her head vigorously. She raised her small head and giggled. "No, Papa, I don't want to eat these. I want Papa to help me catch the little bugs. And then I find something to bring them to school for Xiaoya to eat." Shishi's original idea was very simple. She could directly bring the bugs to school. But soon, the little girl remembered that she was very afraid of these little bugs. Therefore, her voice became low again. Later, she muttered. As she spoke, she was still trying to think of a way. "You can put them in a small bottle, so they can't run out." Yang Yi kindly helped her think of a way. "Yes, put them in a small bottle. The beautiful glass bottle can hold a lot of little bugs." Shishi's eyes lit up and said happily, "Papa is so awesome. But if you bring them to school and you still don't dare to touch them, how are you going to feed them to Xiaoya?" Although Yang Yi enjoyed Shishi's admiration, he still found the idea of the little girl catching insects to be funny, so he asked with a smile. However, Yang Yi did not expect that Shishi only hesitated for a moment. This time, she was very quick-witted and immediately found a solution. "I can pour out the worms for Xiaoya to eat." Yang Yi looked at the energetic little girl. Looking at her bright eyes and joyful smile, he couldn't think of any reason to refuse. "Let's catch bugs then." Yang Yi found a small glass bottle, which used to store ornaments. He asked Murphy and said that she didn't need it. Then he took out the little stars, golden thread, and other miscellaneous things. He didn't need to clean them, and was going to use them to store the little bugs. Of course, Yang Yi didn't intend to play the show of catching bugs empty-handed. He opened the family medical box and took out a small pair of tweezers. While leading Shishi outside, he explained, "Papa will use this to catch the little bugs. And then you can use this to pinch the little bugs out. After Papa helps you catch them, I will kill them, so you don't have to be afraid." "Yes, yes." Shishi nodded happily. She walked 1 step, then 2 steps, and followed behind her father. Anyway, Shishi didn't know what her tolerance limit was. Now, she was eagerly waiting for her father to catch the bugs. Because Shishi usually took care of it very diligently, the little bugs in the planting area were almost extinct. "Oh really? Usually, there are a lot of times when I don't need them, but now when I want them, there is none." Yang Yi couldn't help but complain a few times. Yang Yi searched for a long time, but he didn't even find a little beetle. Finally, he caught a little green insect in the gap of the leaves of the cauliflower. However, this little green insect was also thin and malnourished. It could be said that it was not enough to fill the gap between people's fingernails. Yang Yi used a small pair of tweezers to pinch its head. Suddenly, the little green insect shrank into a ball. It should be dead. However, this shrank into a ball looked very delicious. "Papa, if the little bug dies, will Xiaoya not like it?" Shishi pressed her knees and leaned over to look at her father, who was squatting next to the flower pot, and asked in a low voice. "No, a lot of people feed their birds with dried insects. It should be able to eat them." Yang Yi said, but he smiled bitterly and said to Shishi, "Now there are only a few bugs. You can treat it as a snack and feed it first. In addition, you can feed it some millet powder that Papa gave you yesterday." Because this kind of bird sacks and sand sacks could not be digested directly, Yang Yi and Shishi also prepared a small bag of food for Xiaoya that could be fed for a long time after he and Shishi checked the information yesterday. "Yes, yes." Shishi nodded obediently. "Then at noon today, didn't Papa tell you that I will go to school and take your Xiaoya to see a doctor?" Yang Yi straightened up with a smile and said, "At that time, I will buy it some bread worms and suitable materials for it to eat, so that it can eat more in the future." "Okay." Shishi nodded her little head happily and followed behind her father. Look at her happy face, as if she was Xiaoya. A little bird touched the hearts of many children. It was not only she who was thinking about it, the other children were also thinking about it. Therefore, when Cici arrived at school early in the morning, she saw that many of her classmates had prepared fresh food for Xiaoya. There were apple slices and breadcrumbs. There were also some children who had rolled the buns that they had eaten in the morning into small round balls, and secretly brought them over in their pockets. Of course, what made Cici the happiest was that after a night of rest, Xiaoya had finally recovered quite a bit of energy. Although it couldn't fly, its slender little feet were very strong. It jumped around in the small cage and chirped at the children who were surrounding it. It was quite bold. When others threw apple pieces into the cage, it happily pecked and ate them. Its tail was curled up and twisted, so lively that it did not look like an injured bird. Its small cage is dirty. Don't put the apple on the dirty cage for it to eat. Wang Lele was at the side. He was short and could not reach it, so he anxiously jumped and protested. It's coming, it's coming. Thursday's person in charge, Chao Ruolin, was very enthusiastic. She ran over with a rag to wipe the window, opened the small cage, and reached in to wipe the bird poop. Very quickly, the small cage became clean again, but the rag became dirty and smelly. Can anyone help me wash it? Chao Ruolin saw the bird poop on the rag and regretted it. She anxiously pinched the corner of the rag and stamped her feet. Please. However, all the children took a step back and looked timidly at the rag in her hands, which was stained with bird poop. Then I'll buy another rag. Chao Ruolin threw the rag into the rubbish bin in a fit of pique, and mumbled unhappily. Class monitor's family background was actually not bad. Usually, the car that sent her to and fro was more expensive than Yang Yi's car. Although she was addicted to being the class monitor and liked to report, which made her a little hostile to some of her classmates. In fact, Chao Ruolin was not a child with a bad character. She and her relationship was not particularly good, but Shishi did not have any prejudice against her. Shishi heard her unhappy voice and took the initiative to comfort her. Class monitor, don't worry. At noon, my papa will buy a lot of things for Xiaoya. This way, we won't have to worry about cleaning it in the future. Chao Ruolin did not pay much attention to Shishi's comfort, but her attention was attracted by the small glass bottle in Shishi's hand. She curiously asked, Shishi, what is that? It's a little bug. My papa caught it for Xiaoya this morning. But it's only a little bug, so Xiaoya can only eat it as a snack. At noon, my papa will buy a lot of dried bugs for Xiaoya. Xiaoya will definitely like it. Shishi sweetly smiled and introduced. The little girl held a small pair of tweezers in her other hand. She was ready to feed Xiaoya the little bug. Chapter 1059. There's a bug? Almost all the girls, including Lu Xiaoyu, took a few steps back and looked at Cici in shock. However, there were a few boys who were either really brave or wanted to show off their masculinity in front of the girls, so they came up to her. Let me see what kind of bug it is. Chen Yuxuan excitedly wanted to grab Shishi's hand. However, Shishi nimbly dodged and the little girl shouted, You can't touch it. You can stand aside and watch. Okay then. Therefore, the few boys surrounded the desk and stretched their necks to look at the small bottle that Shishi had placed on the empty desk at the back of the classroom. The others couldn't help but be curious. Since Shishi had explained that it was a dead bug, they gathered their courage and stood behind to watch carefully. She was going to feed the bird a bug. Shishi leaned half of her body on the desk and supported her body with her left arm. She held the small tweezers in her right hand, but when she faced the mouth of the glass bottle, the small tweezers trembled slightly and made a small noise with the glass bottle. In fact, her heart was beating like a drum. Papa said that the little bug won't move. The little girl muttered in her heart and encouraged herself. She stretched out the small tweezers, put them in, and gently picked it up. There seemed to be no twists and turns in the process. Her friends who were watching with bated breath also didn't dare to breathe loudly. However, right at this moment, the little green bug that was clamped between the tweezers suddenly wriggled its body under Cici's gaze. It probably wasn't completely dead yet, and its body was still functioning. It curled its tail and curled it around the tweezers. Suddenly, the atmosphere became a little tense. Shishi's big eyes suddenly widened and stared at the little green bug that had come back from the dead. Half a second later, ah, wah, Shishi's scream tore the silence apart. Then some timid girls remembered. When they saw Shishi jump up in fright, they were also scared to the point of screaming. He was so close to scaring a few timid girls to tears. Shishi was also scared out of her wits. She threw away the tweezers in a panic, turned around, and ran to Lon Xian, hiding behind Lon Xian. Although Lon Xian was not as tall as Shishi, Lon Xian's horizontal length was longer than Shishi's. Shishi shrunk her head and hid herself. Xian, you scared me to death, Shishi said pitifully, holding Lon Xian's arm. Ah, what? What's wrong? Lon Xian was a little slow to react, and she still had a confused expression on her face. She didn't understand why Sisi had suddenly jumped up. That little bug. Shishi's mouth twitched. She was still a little shaken as she said, I don't know why, but it moved again. The girls didn't dare to go closer to see the mess. Chen Yuxuan, on the other hand, was very brave. He went closer, took a look, and exclaimed, Wow, Shishi, look, this little bug is still alive. It's not dead. This little bug was really lucky. Even when Shishi casually threw away the tweezers, it still couldn't be smashed to death. Shishi heard Chen Yuxuan's words and stamped her feet even more anxiously. Just kill the little bug. Lon Xian covered Shishi while she also went over to take a look. However, she still kept a distance. She looked at the little green bug, rolled her eyes, and came up with an idea. Yes. Shishi looked at Lon Xian eagerly, hoping that she could solve the problem. However, Lon Xian was also afraid. She just looked calm on the surface. Lon Xian didn't dare to touch this little bug. Chen Yuxuan, why don't you help us kill it? Shishi looked at Lon Xian. Lon Xian looked at Chen Yuxuan, who didn't seem to be afraid at all. No, Robin. Chen Yuxuan saw that his opportunity to show off had come, so he proudly said an English sentence. He probably learned it from the TV. His pronunciation was not very accurate. However, at this time, Shishi forgot to correct him. Chen Yuxuan looked left and right. There were no other tools, so he simply bent down and took off his sandals. He held them and prepared to slam them on the table. Ah! Wait, Chen Yuxuan, what are you doing? Shishi cried out in surprise. At this time, Shishi had already recovered from the sudden shock. She also couldn't help but stand beside Lon Xian to watch. I'm going to kill it, Chen Yuxuan said matter-of-factly. But that's too cruel. You can't use slippers. Use my little tweezers, Shishi said nervously with her two small hands in front of her chest. Yes, that's too cruel. Shishi's words were echoed by many girls. Oh, I really don't understand you girls. So troublesome. Chen Yuxuan helplessly threw down the slippers and dawdled for a while. Finally, the little bug was executed by the courageous Chen Yuxuan. Shishi once again gathered her courage and picked up the little bug. Like throwing trash, she threw it far away into the birdcage. Fortunately, Xiaoye didn't dislike it. It tilted its round head and looked at it for a while. Finally, it jumped down from the crossbar and pecked it. Yay, it ate it! Shishi was pleasantly surprised. Similarly, all the surrounding children were also happy. Yang Yi came to school at noon to take Xiaoye to the pet hospital for treatment of its broken wing. This time, he came at noon and didn't prepare lunch for Shishi. This made Lon Xian very disappointed. However, Shishi didn't care about this. She was willing to eat her own meals and hoped that Xiaoye could get treatment soon. Uncle, are you taking it to the doctor? Yang Yi was very popular in class 3 of the first grade. When he walked into the classroom to pick up the birdcage, a large group of children crowded around him excitedly. Wang Lele even pulled at his somewhat hoarse voice to ask him questions. The classroom was very noisy. Wang Lele tried to raise his voice so that Yang Yi could hear him. Yes, I'm taking it to the doctor. Yang Yi smiled slightly. Where are you taking it to the doctor? Wang Lele continued to ask. The pet hospital. I heard that there is a more professional pet hospital in the coastal area, so I want to take it there, Yang Yi answered patiently. Indeed, there were many pet hospitals, but not many pet hospitals that treated birds. Yang Yi also asked a lot of people and found out that there was a famous pet hospital in the coastal area. Someone's parrot had its leg broken and was later cured. If it could treat parrots, it should be able to treat small birds, right? This pet hospital was located in the most prosperous area of the coastal area. After all, there were a lot of rich people, and their spending power in terms of pets was much higher than in an old city like Wuhu district. Sure enough, after spending more than an hour, Xiaoyu was bandaged. The doctor applied some medicine on her broken wing, then used a wooden plank to make a brace for her. Finally, he used a breathable gauze to wrap her up. Because Xiaoyu was too small, the doctor could only go around its other wing and wrap the gauze around its round body to fix it. However, Xiaoyu's appearance after being bandaged was very funny. It looked like a human with a broken hand and a bandage around its neck. "Look at you, so cool, like a little hooligan." Yang Yi smiled and reached out to tease it. Xiaoyu was not familiar with its current physical condition. It walked on the plate shakily, but without wings to flutter. Its body was unbalanced. It was like skating and fell several times. "It's okay, it will find its own balance," the doctor explained to Yang Yi. Yang Yi nodded, picked up the little guy, and gently put it into the birdcage. He smiled and said, "Let's go. We'll buy some things for you. For example, a better house for you, okay?" The pet doctor introduced to Yang Yi that behind the big shopping mall where their hospital was, there was a pedestrian street that sold pets and pet-related items. Yang Yi happened to not have to drive to the flower and bird market by himself. He carried the birdcage excitedly and went downstairs. Time has never come back, only leaving behind the pale years. Ideals erase feelings. I just want to leave. Out of the door of the pet hospital, Yang Yi heard a familiar song. Chapter 1060. It was Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan who were singing in the mall. And it wasn't the owner of the music store downstairs who was playing music. When Yang Yi looked down from upstairs, he saw a signing event for Qianli Chuanshu's new album. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were singing for the fans who had arrived. Yang Yi took the elevator from outside and went upstairs directly. He didn't expect such an event to be held in the mall. Moreover, in the Huai Brothers Company, whether it was Qianli Chuanshu, Yang Huan, or Guizi, their itinerary didn't need to be reported to Yang Yi. Mo Xiaowan was the main person in charge. Therefore, although Yang Yi knew that Lu Xiaoshu and the rest had released a folk record at the beginning of this month and that their current results were not bad, by folk record standards, he didn't know the specific itinerary. What a coincidence! Yang Yi carried the birdcage and smiled. He simply stood upstairs and watched for a while. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan didn't expect that the fans in Jiangqing were very enthusiastic. After the promotion of the new album began, they flew around the country according to the company's arrangements, or participated in chart shows, or held signing meetings, or participated in some commercial performance activities. These were all experienced by a new star, or even many stars who had been famous for a long time. However, compared to Beijing and Shanghai, the fans in Jiangqing were especially enthusiastic about them. Looking at the signings, the spontaneously organized fans were holding up support signs, and it was easy to tell. "Love you forever, Qianli Chuanshu. Rivertown will always be your backing. Go forth bravely. Qianli Chuanshu, you are the pride of Jiangqing's university students. With you in my life, I won't be lonely with you." There were many young students at the scene. They waved their signs excitedly, hoping to get Qianli Chuanshu's attention. When it was their turn to sign autographs, they incoherently said many words of encouragement to Qianli Chuanshu. Both Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan were touched by them. After all, when they were signing autographs in Beijing and Shanghai, the fans liked their songs. It was only on this side of their home, their second hometown, that the fans cared about the hardships they had gone through and sincerely understood what they had gone through. Therefore, the company originally did not arrange for them to sing at this signing event. But in order to share their joy with these cute fans, Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan decided to sing a few songs for them on the spot. Starting from their earliest song, "I Miss Her in the Northern Winter," Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were now singing Ideal Monologue, which they had composed during their most difficult times. "As I sit and wait, Reality makes me understand that the place where the dream collapsed is now covered with moss. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan hummed the song, Ideal Monologue, in a low voice. The lyrics were very depressing. Although it was about ideals, it was about the struggles of reality. This song made many of the fans burst into tears. They waved the placards in their hands to encourage Qianli Chuanshu. Hey, isn't that Sugar Cube? Yang Yi was listening to the song with great interest upstairs. He inadvertently saw a girl standing in the corner downstairs, holding up a placard excitedly. A hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Sugar Cube was also thin and weak, so she could not squeeze to the front. However, it did not matter. The space in the middle of the mall was not big, so it did not matter where she listened to the song. She was also intoxicated by Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan singing. Listening to their sad melody, she secretly wiped away her tears. However, this scene happened to fall into Yang Yi's eyes. I think I heard from Huan Huan that Sugar Cube seems to like Mao Chuan. Yang Yi touched his chin and secretly gossiped. Last year, before Qianli Chuanshu participated in China's Top Voice and had not debuted, they were all singing at the coffee shop at the corner of the street. As a waitress, Sugar Cube was very enthusiastic about them. After Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan finished singing Ideal Monologue, Lu Xiaoshu smiled and said, I feel that the songs we sang are too depressing. Why don't we change to a more pleasant song? Brother Yang Yi wrote for us. With You Forever? This is really the last song because if we continue to sing, this signing event will not be over. No, it can't be the last song. Unsurprisingly, the fans started protesting with laughter. Of course, they still had to be considerate of Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan. It was already an exception for them to sing for the fans. In the end, the fans did not pester them to continue singing. However, what Qianli Chuanshu did not expect was that the last song the fans wanted them to sing was not With You Forever, but another song written by Yang Yi, The Ordinary Road. When the album was first released, The Ordinary Road did not perform as well as the more romantic With You Forever. It did not even perform as well as Qianli Chuanshu's I Miss Her in the Northern Winter and Growing Up Gradually. After all, this song lacked the popularity of Pu Shu in his previous life and the foreshadowing of the movie. However, the song The Ordinary Road was getting more and more interesting. In less than a week, its ranking on the new best-selling songs chart was gradually climbing up. Currently, The Ordinary Road was second only to With You Forever. It was a pity that both songs were blocked outside the top 20. Perhaps they needed to continue building up their foundation. No matter what, since the fans wanted to listen to The Ordinary Road, Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan picked up their guitars and started plucking the strings, playing the guitar of this song. Compared to the richer melodies on the record, the guitar playing of The Ordinary Road had a unique, simple, and pure feeling. Wandering on the Road. Mao Chuan's clear and sad voice opened the prelude to this song. As if affected by this song, the originally noisy shopping mall gradually quieted down. Whether it was Qianli Chuanshu's fans or some passers-by who were shopping, they could not help but stop and listen. Two big boys were standing on a small stage, playing their guitars while singing with a microphone and sound system that were of poor quality. It was quite fun. It seemed to be as simple as described in the lyrics, but it was very close to reality and very down to earth. I've crossed mountains and seas. I've also passed through a sea of people. Everything I once had, in the blink of an eye, drifted away like smoke. This part of the lyrics was still catchy. Many fans who liked this song couldn't help but hum along. However, Yang Yi, who was upstairs, felt that Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan's singing was the climax of their chorus. I once lost all my sense of direction, until I saw that being ordinary was the only answer. Maybe it was more in line with their state of mind? Actually, wasn't this song a portrayal of Yang Yi himself? On Tuesday, Murphy showed Yang Yi a music review of The Ordinary Road. It said this. The Ordinary Road was written by Yang Yi for Qianli Chuanshu, but I feel that it is more like an encouragement to himself. Now, Yang Yi's net worth is the best in the entertainment industry. It can be said that he is completely extraordinary. However, he is still the same as when he first debuted. He is low-key calm, doesn't seek the limelight, doesn't cause trouble, and concentrates on music. That is why even though he has a net worth of billions, He still has an endless stream of works. Perhaps, being ordinary is the true path of music. This statement was not completely correct about Yang Yi, but the general direction was not wrong. Yang Yi indeed yearned for being ordinary. He wanted to cherish the warm and happy family he had now, live the ordinary and happy life he had now, and occasionally create some works to satisfy his literary and artistic feelings, and then accompany Mo Fei to sing songs together, and take his family to travel together. That was enough. Don't think about too many fancy things. If he lost his current ordinary life, it would be difficult to get it back. After coming back to his senses, Yang Yi looked downstairs. Qian Li Chuanshu was still singing. I once asked the whole world, but I never got an answer. I was just like you, like him, like the wild flowers. Somehow, this is the only path I have to take. It was almost the end of the song. Yang Yi looked at the two young men who were singing passionately in the midst of their fans and smiled slightly. He thought to himself, your path has also begun. You must continue to work hard and walk down it. Yang Yi did not greet Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan, nor did he disturb Fang Tang's support. After silently listening to the song, he carried the birdcage and leisurely went to the flower and bird market like an old man. Chapter 1061. Before school ended on Thursday afternoon, Xiaoya was finally sent back to school. But this time, Xiaoya could be said to be living the life of a rich little bird. Because compared to the little bird cage from before, the bird cage that Xiaoya lived in now could be called a luxurious villa. The space was big enough to occupy more than half of the empty desk. The height was also much higher than before, enough for Xiaoya's small frame to flutter around freely. In addition, considering that Xiaoya's wings were injured, Yang Yi also asked someone to install a staircase in the birdcage, similar to a hamster cage. Xiaoya could climb the stairs and jump to a small platform made of barbed wire on the second floor, as well as sleep in a small nest made of hay on the second floor. There was a water dispenser, a food bowl, and everything else. The easier-to-open cage door was also convenient for the children to clean up Xiaoya. In the blink of an eye, it was Friday afternoon again. After school, many children ran out of school in high spirits because they were going to welcome another weekend where they could let go of themselves. However, when Yang Yi saw Shishi and Lan Xian come out, the little girl was a little unhappy. At first, Yang Yi thought that Shishi was unhappy because she had to say goodbye to Xiaoya for 2 days, and was a little reluctant to part. However, while driving, Shishi and Lan Xian, the two little girls, were chattering in the back, which made Yang Yi feel that something was wrong. I don't like the class monitor to take care of Xiaoya. Shishi pouted her little mouth and said unhappily. But taking care of Xiaoya is troublesome. Shishi, let's go to the park to play this weekend, okay? Lan Xian said with a smile of exultation. Oh, Xian heir, I want Xiaoya to come to our house to play. Shishi saw that Lan Xian's thoughts had drifted to God knows where. So she shook Lan Xian's arm reproachfully. But, Teacher Li said that Chao Ruolin has to take care of Xiaoya this week. Lan Xian scratched her head and said with some confusion. Also, don't you have Xiao Guai and the rest at home? Why did you ask Xiaoya to come over? This question could be considered as revisiting an old matter. Shishi twisted her body on the chair anxiously, and quickly thought of an idea. Her eyes lit up as she giggled and said, I can put Xiaoya in my room. Then I'll tell Xiao Guai, Dondo, and Baozi that you can't come to my room. Then Xiaoya will be safe. Oh right, Lan Xian thought for a moment, and it seemed to make sense. She giggled and nodded, saying, well, next time you should tell Teacher Li earlier to let Xiaoya live in your house. I don't know. Shishi pouted and said, the teacher didn't say that Xiaoya could stay at her classmate's house on the weekend. I thought I would have to wait until the weekend to come to school to accompany Xiaoya. Then there's no other way. Lan Xian shook her head indifferently. She didn't have a strong desire like Shishi. But I don't like the class leader to take care of Xiaoya. Shishi still insisted on this topic. Why? Lan Xian asked absent-mindedly. Because. Shishi wanted to say that she was worried that Chao Ruolin wouldn't be able to take care of Xiaoya. But in reality, Chao Wolin was the captain of Team 4, and she still saw her do a lot of things. In the end, the little girl was affected by the little resentment in her heart and muttered, "Because my daddy bought a big house for Xiaoya and a lot of little bugs. Xiaoya likes to play with me." Okay, I also think that Xiaoya should live in our house. Lan Xian played the role of a qualified best friend, and went along with Xishi's words and agreed. "That's not fair." Xishi nodded her head vigorously and said angrily. Yang Yi listened to Xishi and Lan Xian's conversation from the front, and couldn't help but frown. Actually, he could understand Xishi's feelings at this moment. From Wednesday till now, the little girl had put in a lot of effort for this little bird and for Xiaoya. She even mustered up the courage to come into contact with the little bug that she had always been afraid of. Xishi really hoped that Xiaoya could come to their house as a guest. But this time it was intercepted by someone else, so how could she not be upset? But Yang Yi could understand Xishi's feelings, but that didn't mean that Yang Yi agreed with Xishi's words. Instead, from these words, he could feel that Xishi's mentality was a little bad. Perhaps it was because the living environment provided by her family was too good, that Xishi had almost never suffered any setbacks. Therefore, when she encountered something that didn't go her way, she acted very hard to accept. There was even an internet catchphrase that could be used to describe the little girl's current state. "Jealousy separates me, jealousy makes me unrecognizable." Although it was a little exaggerated, Yang Yi still didn't want Xishi to have such a mentality. However, Yang Yi didn't immediately stop Xishi and Lan Xian's discussion. In the car, he reflected on his way of educating Xishi and looked for where the problem was while also thinking of a more suitable way to discuss this problem with Xishi. Xishi would be 7 years old this summer. Girls at this age were no longer like when she was 4 years old. No matter what happened, she would blindly worship her father. Children at 6 or 7 years old tended to be independent. Although they were still very childish, they all had the self-desire to think independently. They were no longer like before where they would seek help from adults whenever they encountered a problem. Reasoning in a long way might cause the little girl to be disgusted. Yang Yi hoped to use a more ingenious way to solve the problem that Xishi was currently experiencing. On Friday night at 8 o'clock prime time, I Am a Singer premiered. Many people turned on their TVs early and tuned to Jiangnan satellite TV, which they rarely visited except for some good soap operas. China Star Production and Jiangnan TV station's publicity for more than half a month had been effective, especially the viral marketing used on the micro-broadcast. It was said that many office workers' conversations in the office for the past half a month could not be separated from I Am a Singer. For example, when Su Linglong's promotional video was released, the fifth singer to appear on the show was officially unveiled. The entertainment media had exposed her before, but there was no official announcement, so it was doubtful. When many young employees talked about Su Linglong in the office, some middle-aged and even older employees, although they did not use micro-broadcasting, also participated in the discussion with great interest after hearing Qin Yu's name. They described how popular Su Linglong was in their era, and how much she was a goddess singer who was loved by everyone. Under such a public attack, the expectation of I Am a Singer before the broadcast had reached a height that surpassed that of the Limit Challenge Season 2. Therefore, after the show was broadcast, whether it was the ratings or the hashtag I Am a Singer hashtag on micro-broadcasting, it quickly climbed to a very high level. People were very excited to see singers that they were familiar with go on stage one by one. At the same time, they were also shocked by the voices of singers that they were not familiar with, but had excellent singing skills. This was supposed to be a night to enjoy music and experience old times. However, at Yang Yi's house, although the show was on the TV, Yang Yi and Murphy's focus was not on it. After all, for them, this was the second time they had watched the show. Xi and Tong Tong, who were playing in the living room, were still the subject of their discussion. Suddenly, the lights in the living room went out, leaving only the flickering light of the TV. Chapter 1062. Suddenly, the living room became pitch black, and only the colorful light from the TV shone on everyone's faces. However, no one was surprised. Even Xi, who was immersed in her own world of dolls, did not scream. However, everyone looked to the side. Murphy even rebuked, "Young Xiaosu, you're being naughty again." At this moment, Tong Tong, who was crawling on the sofa and trying to press the switch on the back of the sofa, was caught red-handed. He heard his mother calling him, so he quickly pressed the switch again and turned on the light in the living room. When the lights came back on, Xiao Pai's smiling eyes appeared in everyone's vision. The little guy giggled and didn't feel embarrassed at being caught. He stepped on the soft sofa and walked slowly to his mother's side. Tong Tong's range of activities had expanded, and he was gradually not satisfied with the small toys that he usually played with. He was full of curiosity about the world, and he constantly explored many places in the house that he had never touched before. For example, he did not know when, but he suddenly felt that it was very interesting to press the switch when his parents turned on the lights. Therefore, he started to play with the switch. Usually, he could not reach most of the switches in the house, except for this one, which was built on the sofa for convenience. Therefore, he treated this switch as his new toy. After doing so many mischievous pranks, it was easy for everyone to figure out who had caused the light to go off just now. "Don't come over, you're being naughty." Murphy rejected Tong Tong's open arms and deliberately said with a straight face, "Mom." Tong Tong anxiously stepped on the sofa and looked at his mother pitifully. "Is the light switch that fun? Look at sister, she didn't even play with the switch." Murphy pointed at Shishi and said to Tong Tong, "Hee, I won't play like little brother." Cece turned her head and said with a smile, her eyebrows raised. Little rascal still knew that his mother and sister were talking about him, so he unwillingly used his little, but to squeeze his mother's arm. As he twisted, he pouted his little mouth and unwillingly made a woo-woo sound. Yang Yi knew that no matter what Murphy said, it would be useless. Tong Tong would not be reasonable with her. If she tried to reason with him now, he would forget about it later when he wanted to play a prank. The best solution was not to reprimand him, but to find something for him to exhaust his vigorous energy. Yang Yi thought for a while, then got up and went to the side hall to get 2 sets of plastic cups that were usually used to entertain guests. Because some of Cece's friends often came to visit, or some of Yang Yi's and Mo Fei's friends and relatives in Jiang City would also come to play, Yang Yi bought this plastic cup set with different colors. There were 7 plastic cups in a set, which was like a rainbow, with 7 different colors. The plastic cups were made of light material, so they could be used to serve guests with water that was not too hot, or any of the drinks that Yang Yi made. The different and bright colors were also very popular with the children. Of course, Yang Yi took out these cups mainly because they were of the same size and were made of the same glossy material. "Shishi Huahua, come here. Daddy is going to teach you a very interesting game." Yang Yi greeted them with a smile. He cleared the coffee table and took out the topmost cup from the set of 7. He put it aside and placed the remaining 6 cups on the table. Okay. Shishi was the most supportive. She excitedly put down her soft toy, climbed over, and sat next to her father. "Huahua, go and see what Daddy is going to play with you." Tong Tong was still pestering his mother, but when he saw his sister's happy expression and his mother's words, he hesitated for a while, then carefully climbed down from the sofa and moved to his sister's side. "Sit here, little brother, sit here." Shishi patted the seat next to her and called out to Tong Tong. She liked the feeling of her father and brother sitting on either side of her. Perhaps it gave her a sense of security. Tong Tong did not mind. He obediently listened to his sister's instructions. Moreover, Tong Tong liked to imitate his sister, whom he admired. Shishi sat next to the coffee table, her 2 slender legs stretched out under the coffee table. Tong Tong followed suit, and did not sit cross-legged. Not only that, but the little boy also glanced at his sister and placed his 2 little hands on the coffee table. The coffee table in Yang Yi's house was not tall, and it was even lower than the sofa. The main purpose of buying it was not to drink tea, but to make it convenient for Cece and her parents to do some manual work on it. However, Tong Tong was still too small. When he sat down, only half of his head was above the coffee table. This was a little sad because Shishi naturally placed her 2 hands on the coffee table, as if she was in class. Tong Tong had to raise his little arms to place his hands on the coffee table. "Come, let's play a game called cup folding." Yang Yi showed Shishi and Tong Tong the game. He took out 6 sets of cups and showed them to Xixi and Tong Tong. Then he slowed down and stacked 2 small pyramids according to the order of the cups. Left, right, left. He alternated between his left and right hands and stacked 2 small pyramids. Xixi and Tong Tong stared at him intently. However, at this stage they were confused and did not understand what their father was playing. Of course, this was just a simple demonstration. After Yang Yi was done, he put away the cups and said with a smile, "This is called folding cups, but if we speed it up, it will be called speed folding cups. This is a more classic competitive game. Daddy will demonstrate it to you." He placed the 6 cups in a pyramid in the middle of the coffee table. Then, in the blink of an eye, he grabbed 3 cups with his left hand, and the remaining 2 with his right hand. Then he quickly overlapped his left and right hands. A pyramid of 6 cups stacked up in the blink of an eye. How fast was Yang Yi's hand speed? Thinking about how many years he had been single in his previous life, he might have the answer. Fog. Anyway, Xixi and Tong Tong were dazzled. This move stunned them. Wow. Cici clasped her 2 small hands excitedly, and her eyes were about to emit little stars. How did he do it? Xixi could not see clearly, but she felt that her father was super awesome. Tong Tong also stared at the cups with his big round eyes. His face was full of surprise. He stared at the cups. When his sister cried out in surprise, their father put the cups away smoothly and restored them to their original state. The little guy didn't even blink as he stared at the cups without moving, as if he was trying to find the magical power contained in that movement just now through these cups. The first person to react was Murphy. She was sitting on the sofa at the back, but she also stuck her head out to watch. "Hey, I used to play this when I was young." Now Murphy seemed to have been awakened by Yang Yi's hand speed. She smiled and said, "In the past, there was a competition like this in the US. It was broadcasted on TV. In foreign countries, it was called stack. In Chinese, it was called stacking cups or speed stacking cups." "Mommy used to play this?" Yang Yi looked back at Murphy and pointed at the cups. He smiled and said, "Mommy, come and perform." "I can't. I didn't play this well in the past, and I can't be as good as you now." Murphy quickly waved her hands and said embarrassedly, "It's okay. Just perform for Xixi and Tao Wu." Yang Yi said with a smile, "It's okay. Come Xixi, Tao Wu, give Mommy a round of applause. Come on." Chapter 1063. Mo Fei was not a 3-year-old child. Why would she need to applaud and cheer for her to come out? Yang Yi had his reasons for doing so. However, Xixi clapped her hands happily after hearing her father's call. Tong Tong followed suit and clapped his hands again and again as he giggled with his father and sister. Okay, I'll try. I haven't played for a long time. Don't laugh at me if I don't do it well." Mo Fei grumbled. As she spoke, she got up and sat next to little Momo, taking the stack of cups that Yang Yi handed over. Normally, a competition would use up to 12 cups to play 3-6-3, or some other stacking method. However, Murphy was not confident that she could do it. She followed Yang Yi's demonstration and tried it out. "I think I'll do it in 3s. Murphy mumbled as she pressed the cup pyramid with her left hand, and reached for the topmost 3 cups with her right hand. Both Cici and Little Swan and I turned around and stared fixedly at him. Little Swan and I was even entranced. He opened his small mouth slightly, revealing his rosy lips and a few small, white, and clean teeth. "Just take the remaining 2 cups with your left hand, and put the last cup there as the base. Usually, your right hand will take the cup first. You have to stack them from right to left." Yang Yi looked at Murphy's hesitant expression as she picked up the remaining 3 cups with her left hand. He reminded her, "Of course, it depends on which hand you use. If you use your left hand, then you have to do it the other way around." Yes, from right to left. Murphy seemed to have found inspiration from Yang Yi's words. She happily chanted in English, "Drop with your right, left, right, left, right. Put 1 cup down with your right hand, left hand, right hand." This English passage might have been taught to Mo Fei by her teacher when she was studying. As Mo Fei recited it, she smoothly piled up the pyramid. Although the speed was not fast, it was still smooth and there were no bumps or bumps. Wow. Mom is awesome too. Yang Yi smiled and took the lead in clapping. She was her father's loyal follower. She also clapped. However, the little girl was now interested. She looked at the cup in her mother's hand, and moved her little but restlessly. She also wanted to play. Tong Tong, on the other hand, was still in a daze. He stared blankly at his mother without blinking. Don't be in such a hurry to flatter him. I'll do it again and slowly get the feeling. Mo Fei said with a grin. She was also having a good time. She took the cup excitedly, folded it again and did it again. It had to be said that Murphy had been practicing piano since she was a child, so her long and slender fingers were a benefit. After she folded the cup a few times, her movements became smoother and smoother. Although she was not as fast as Yang Yi, she gradually made Xi and Tong Tong dazzled. Mom is really awesome, Xi whispered as she leaned on her father's arm. Her eyes were filled with envy. Hey, play too. Tong Tong finally reacted. Since he was sitting and could not reach the cup, he grabbed the edge of the coffee table and stood up. Then he squinted his eyes and smiled as he reached out to grab the cup in his mother's hand. Come play for you. Play like mom and play well. Murphy smiled, folded the cup, and pushed it to him. Ah, I want to play too. Papa, I want to play too. Xi looked at Tong Tong with her big eyes full of surprise. She was so sad that she almost burst into tears. The little girl turned her head and her eyes seemed to be misty. She looked at her father pitifully and asked for help. She was supposed to wait for her mother to play for a while, and then take over. How long had she been watching? Even when she was clapping, she was watching intently. How could her brother beat her to it? Cece was anxious and aggrieved at the same time. She pouted her little mouth. What's the hurry? Aren't there more? Yang Yi laughed and took out another set of 7 colored plastic cups. He shook them proudly at Xi and said, Look at how thoughtful Papa is. You and your brother can play at the same time. As Yang Yi spoke, he opened the packaging and took out the 7 sets of cups. Then, just like before, Yang Yi took out the red cup on the top, and handed the remaining 6 cups to Xi. Hey, there's more. Hee, Papa is so nice. Xi's mood turned for the better, and she happily took the cups. With her own cup, Xi did not look at her brother's cup. The little girl pulled out the cups one by one, and put them on the table like her father did. However, she looked at the 6 cups in front of her, and then looked at the red cup on the side. The little girl hesitated for a moment, and then picked up the blue cup and said to her father, Papa, I don't want this blue one. It's not pretty. Can I change it to red? This was not a problem. After changing, Xi could finally start to play the game of folding cups. You start from 3-3. Yang Yi saw that Xi did not know where to start, so he guided her step by step. Come on, read it to Papa. Right, left, right. No matter what Cece did, as long as she was interested in it, she would be very serious. Therefore, in order to learn how to fold cups and be on the same level as her father, she also became serious. Her jubilant expression also disappeared. Right, left, right. The little girl pursed her lips and carefully placed the cups in the order that her father said. Bumps were inevitable, but Xi's hands were still very flexible. After several failures, she finally got the hang of it. This time, although the speed was not fast, the little girl successfully folded the pyramid, and then folded the cups into a string. Wow! The little girl finished folding cups for the first time. She turned her head and looked at her father in surprise. Yeah, you did it. You learned it so quickly. You're very good. Yang Yi smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Tong Tong heard the noise and could not help but turn his head to look. He was still holding the cup and grinding it on the tea table. Inheriting the excellent genes of his parents, the little guy's fingers were also very slender. However, he was still young and it was not easy for him to hold the cup with one hand. He still stood on the ground and played with the cup with both hands. Now he turned his head and looked at his sister's performance. He was a little surprised. Sister is so good. Sister is great. Murphy also gave Yang Yi a thumbs up and smiled softly. At this time, Xi was overjoyed by her father and mother's praise. Her beautiful eyes curved into 2 crescent moons. She raised her head and smiled while saying a little embarrassedly, "Hee, I don't know. I can do it all of a sudden." Go on, go on. When you're familiar with it, let's fold the pyramid with 6 cups. Then you can show it to your mother and brother. Yang Yi encouraged. Okay. Shishi nodded happily. The little girl's interest was completely aroused. She was not satisfied with the small sense of accomplishment just now. She wanted to get more praise from her father, mother, and brother. Mom and Papa can fold a big pyramid, so can I. Shishi thought in her mind. Under her father's guidance, she found the feeling just now and continued to fold cups. Chapter 1064. The game of stacking cups seemed a little brainless, but once you got used to it, there was an inexplicable attraction, just like spinning a pen. Shishi, who was nimble with her hands, gradually grasped the rules of the pyramid made of 6 cups. All that was left was to practice over and over again to improve her proficiency. However, her performance was still the same as when she first started playing. She was in high spirits and focused. At around 8 o'clock, Murphy called her to take a bath. The little girl couldn't bear to put her down, just like when she was watching TV and was called to do something by her mother. She acted coquettishly and said that she wanted to play for a while more. Play again tomorrow. Daddy will teach you a more difficult game tomorrow. It was Yang Yi who put away her cup and said a few words. Only then did she reluctantly follow her mother upstairs to take a bath. The I Am a Singer on TV was nearing the end, but because Yang Yi brought the 2 little guys home early, he didn't see the rest of the plot. Therefore, although he knew what the ending was, Yang Yi still watched the final voting and ranking segment with great interest. It's a little dragging. Yang Yi looked at the last segment that dragged on and deliberately made suspenseful ranking segment. He couldn't help but frown. It was a little similar to what Yang Yi saw in his previous life. There were some areas that were criticized. It was obviously a simple ranking. Whether it was typed on the screen or read out directly, it would take tens of seconds. Why would it take more than 10 minutes to explain? In Yang Yi's proposal, it was a lot simpler. Of course, Yang Yi didn't care too much about it. His level of thinking had improved a lot. From this segment of the program, his first thought was not to refute Hong Yuman, the executive director, for what he was doing. Instead, he thought about Hong Yuman's intentions. Perhaps creating suspense and increasing the atmosphere of the competition wasn't a bad thing from a program's design, right? It couldn't just be singing. If the small segments around the singing were ignored, it would be easy for the audience to develop aesthetic fatigue. Perhaps for the ordinary audience, they weren't just pure music lovers like Yang Yi. Listening to songs was just one of their reasons for watching the show. Other than that, they might also be very interested in the performances of the singers on stage and behind the scenes. After a short period of thinking, Yang Yi also realized the limitations of his ability. Professional matters should be left to the professionals. Yang Yi shook his head gently. He got up and turned off the TV. He was about to call Tong Tong upstairs to take a bath. But when he turned off the TV and turned around, he was surprised to find that in the past few minutes, Xiao Xiaofeng had actually taken those few cups and set up a very special pyramid for himself. Yang Yi knew that the little boy's hands were too small, so he couldn't control them well. Therefore, he and Murphy didn't teach him how to make the cups. Shi, on the other hand, was concerned about her little brother. She helped him make the pyramid and wanted to teach her little brother. However, in the end, she gave up and gave up. Tong Tong persevered. Without his father's attention, he stood at the side and played by himself. He flipped the cups a few times. This time the little boy succeeded. Yang Yi saw that Tong Tong's pyramid was different from the others. He placed the 4 cups on the first layer in a circle. Then he placed another cup on the second layer. The most difficult part was the third layer. In order to place the cup on the second layer, he placed the cup on the bottom of the second layer. But one had to know that the other cups were placed upside down. Tong Tong tried his best to learn from his sister and mother. He didn't expect that in the end he would come up with a new trick. He used the same 6 cups to make a 3-tiered pyramid. Of course, Tong Tong's performance wasn't particularly surprising. After all, any older child, such as Shishi, could do the same. What surprised Yang Yi was that Tong Tong's little brain was quite smart. After failing a few times, he was able to use his own brain to find the most suitable pyramid for himself. This was rare. Anyone could imitate, but what was rare was that he was able to come up with new ideas. Also, what interested Yang Yi was that when Tong Tong's chubby little hands were fiddling with the cups, he controlled his strength well. He didn't shake the cups. Instead, he held the cups steadily. In the end, Tong Tong opened his little mouth and looked as though he was about to drool. After he let go of the cups, he stuck out his little butt and bent down to look at his work. The buttocks of the two cups fit together perfectly. The two circles overlapped almost perfectly. When he saw that it was done, he smiled happily. He turned his head and saw his father standing behind him, smiling at him. "Papa!" Tong Tong happily ran over with his little legs. He grabbed his father's trousers and pulled. Then he pointed at his work and asked his father to look at it. "You did great. Papa likes it very much." Yang Yi's heart was filled with a lot of fondness. He smiled and bent down to pick up the little fellow. First, he kissed his tender little face, then gave him a thumbs up and praised him. Tong Tong was also satisfied in his father's arms. He smiled foolishly and clapped his little hands. "It looks like you are very talented. When you grow up, Papa will teach you some very powerful martial arts." Yang Yi looked at his son and said softly. Although he knew that Tong Tong did not understand, he was very pleased. He felt that the combination of his genes and Murphy's genes was extraordinary. He had found his future successor. Tong Tong did not understand. He looked at his father with a puzzled expression and tilted his little head slightly. "You have to be your sister's guardian angel in the future." Yang Yi reached out to rub the little guy's head and said in a relaxed tone. She also learned martial arts. However, Yang Yi loved his daughter dearly and could not bear to train her. Therefore, Shishi's future achievements were only superficial. No matter how talented she was, she could only reach the level of Yang Huan. Tong Tong's muscles and bones were very suitable for martial arts. Moreover, he was a boy. When he grew up, he would have to suffer more. An old teacher who worked in education once wrote in her book, "Praise in person, criticize in private." No matter how young a child is, he still has his dignity. Yang Yi had read this sentence a few years ago. At that time, he did not know how to educate a child, so he bought a lot of education books to learn. At that time, he did not understand this sentence, but he felt that it was amazing. Therefore, he memorized it in his mind. After taking care of and educating Shishi for the past few years, he gradually understood the meaning of this sentence. Therefore, Yang Yi rarely criticized Shishi in front of Lan Xian or the other children. Even if Shishi did something wrong, he would try his best to leave it until night time. When he sat with her in the little girl's room, he would slowly reason with Shishi. At around 9:30 p.m., Yang Yi handed Tong Tong to Murphy. He gently knocked on the door of the master bedroom and walked in. "Have you finished writing your diary?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. "Yes, I've finished it. Papa, look, I even wrote down our game of folding cups." Shishi ran over happily, pulled her father to her desk, and let him read her diary. "But folding words is so difficult to write. I have wiped it several times, but I still can't write it well." "It's okay, Papa will teach you," Yang Yi said patiently. After he finished reading Shishi's diary, he briefly commented on it. Then he picked up a storybook from the bookshelf. They usually did the same. Before Shishi went to bed, she would read with her father for a period of time. Shishi also sat upright in front of the desk, waiting expectantly. However, this time, Yang Yi did not rush to open the storybook. Instead, he clasped it in his hand and said with a smile, "Shishi, Papa wants to ask you a question. Did you have fun playing the game of folding cups today?" Chapter 1065. Dad's question was too easy to answer. Was it fun to play the cup folding game? Of course it was fun. Shishi giggled and nodded at her dad. Then let me describe an environment to you. Let's say that you are given a room, such as the bedroom we are in now, and you are alone in the room, folding cups. Would you be happy? Or would you be happy tonight? Yang Yi's question was very clear. However, Shishi's imagination was still running wild. She tilted her head and asked curiously, "Would Xaner play with me?" "There's no Xaner, there's only you." Yang shook his head. Shishi blinked and quickly shook her head. She pouted and said, "I don't want to play alone." When Shishi was young, she was indeed lonely. However, since she was 4 years old, she had her dad to accompany her at home. When her parents went on business trips, they would take her out to play. When she was in kindergarten, she had friends to play with. Later on, she had many good friends. She was not used to being alone. Yang Yi mentioned this just to make a small comparison. He did not intend to scare Shishi. Therefore, he smiled and continued, "Then do you feel that when you were playing tonight, you were very good at folding cups? Then, when your parents and little brother applauded you, you felt a great sense of accomplishment?" Shishi immediately thought of the feeling just now. She was in high spirits all of a sudden. Yes, super happy. So this is what we are working hard to do. In fact, it is not only for ourselves. We also hope to be recognized by more people. Praise or encouragement from others is a very strong motivation for each of us. Do you feel happier after receiving everyone's praise? Do you hope that you can do better? Yang Yi clenched his fist and said to Shishi. Shishi nodded obediently. Do you think they'll be happy when Dad asks you to clap for Mom or little brother? Yang Yi asked. Shishi's eyes lit up. She had something to say about this topic. She grabbed her father's hand happily and said, "Papa, let me tell you. After you, my brother, and I applauded Mom. Mom was willing to play folding cups. Then she didn't know that she was also super good." Looking at the little girl's happy expression, it seemed that she had a part in Murphy's ability to play fast folding cups. Yang Yi was amused by the little girl's innocent look. He laughed and reached out his right hand to rub Shishi's slightly damp hair. "Yes, your encouragement is very important. And little brother, he also likes to play. When I gave him a thumbs up, he was also very happy." Shishi gestured her little thumbs up to her father and giggled. "Well, that's right. This is the first topic that I want to talk to you about tonight. We can't be reluctant to say some encouraging words to others." Yang Yi said softly. "You also see how powerful the power of encouragement is? It doesn't matter if it's someone encouraging you or you encouraging someone else. It's just a short sentence, just a simple gesture." Yang Yi gave a thumbs up and pointed his thumb at Shishi. "It's easy to do, but it can give others, or others can give us more joy and better motivation." Although her father was smiling, his attitude became serious. Shishi also felt it, so she looked at her father and listened carefully. Don't underestimate this little encouragement. Although this kind of encouragement is not the key to a person's success, this kind of encouragement can help others do things better. Yang Yi said softly, "Think about it. You're in such a good mood tonight. You folded the cup quickly and accurately. If it weren't for the encouragement of Dad, Mom, and little brother, your mood would be more ordinary. Wouldn't you be so good?" Shishi nodded vigorously. Her father's metaphors were still relatively easy to understand. Until now, Shishi didn't feel too burdened listening to it, because she was still in a state of confusion, and didn't know where to apply these principles. "Why did Dad talk to you about this topic?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Because this evening when Dad picked you and Xaner up, you and Xaner were in the car. Didn't you say that you didn't like the class monitor taking care of Xiaoya?" When Shishi heard her father suddenly talk about this matter, she realized that she might have done something wrong. She twisted in the chair nervously and nodded reluctantly. "Dad thinks that your mentality might not be good. Before doing something, we first deny the ability of others. This will bring negative energy to the other party and to us." Yang Yi smiled and said, "It might be hard for you to understand what Dad is saying, but let's think about it in a different way. If we didn't look at this problem with this unhappy mentality at the beginning, but like what Dad said before, we went to Chow Roland and said, 'Class monitor, I believe you will take good care of Xiaoya. You are also a very caring person.' Then, if her mood becomes very good, will she work hard to take care of Xiaoya?" Shishi pouted and said, "But I hope Xiaoya can come to our house to play." This is the second topic that Dad wanted to talk to you about tonight. We have to have a heart that pursues perfection, but what we want to achieve is not perfection, but perfection. Because in this world, Not everything can satisfy our wishes. Yang Yi used tonight's matter as an example again. For example, tonight you played with folding cups. Who do you think is faster, compared to mom and dad? After being exposed, she felt very unhappy. She muttered unwillingly, Papa and Mom are faster. Yes, you didn't do your best, but it doesn't matter. Dad still thinks that your performance tonight was very good. You are also very happy, and we are all very happy. Even though you didn't do your best, Dad thinks that you have already done very well. It's only the first day of play, and you can do so well. In the future, you will definitely improve even better. Thinking about it this way, your performance is very worthy of praise and joy, don't you think so? Yang Yi said softly. She listened to her father's words and thought carefully. She had indeed performed very well. No wonder her father and mother were so happy. Her mood improved again. She giggled and said, That's right. That's why I said that we want to do our best. But sometimes, we can't do our best. It doesn't matter, as long as we put in the effort, make progress, or get the results that we should have at this stage. This is already very good. Yang Yi gave Shishi a thumbs up. The reason for inviting Xiaoye to our house as a guest is actually the same. You are very kind and hope that Xiaoye can come to our house and be well taken care of. This idea is very good, but other students also have the same idea. Not everyone can be satisfied. So the teacher also considered this problem. Maybe this weekend, Xiaoye went to class leader Chao Ruolin's house. Next week, Xiaoye might come to our house. Even if it doesn't come next week, it might come next week. Teacher believes in you all. You are all very caring children. No matter whose house Xiaoye goes to, it will definitely have a good time. Yang Yi said softly. If Xiaoye comes to our house next week, will you also warmly entertain it? Of course. Shishi nodded vigorously and raised her voice. I want to give Xiaoye my room. This way, Xiao Guai and the others won't scare Xiaoye. Look, although Xiaoye didn't come to our house this weekend, which isn't perfect, if it comes in the future, you will still be very happy, right? Yang Yi said softly. Shishi nodded her head faster this time, but this time she did not smile. She only pursed her lips and tried to accept it. Then, if we don't have to be so depressed, we will happily congratulate Chao Ruolin and encourage her, hoping that she will take good care of Xiaoye. The next time Xiaoye comes to our house, we will take better care of Xiaoye. Will you also be very happy? Yang Yi said with a smile. Actually, the class leader is still very good. On Thursday, when she was wiping Xiaoye's stench, she wasn't afraid and even bought a lot of rags. She finally said something fair. Originally, these discoveries were hidden in her heart. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.